There you go. Say
So
test 1, 2, 3, 4.
test 1, 2, 3, 4.
You still sound like you're in a hallway.
All right. How about that?
That's better.
Okay.
Now do test 1, 2, 3, 4.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4.
There you go.
All right. So you actually said something that I wanted to bring up. You're talking about the Stasi spying on people, but so this NSA Patriot Act 2.0 thing that they're talking about.
Oh,
I
they're
don't
going
know
to
if you
cram it through Congress.
I don't know
You
if you
know,
saw that in the news, but before we talk about that, I know we know each other, but can you just go through a basic introduction, who you are, what you
sure.
do?
My name is Chip Harris. I'm a certified ethical hacker, pen tester, forensic investigator, and auditor. I work for a company called DMI. And one of the things that I handle in the cybersecurity world is I deal with scientists, I deal with healthcare, and I deal with banking. Those are my three things that I deal with when I deal with cybersecurity. But I've also worked for private engagements for other companies throughout. Chase Bank, to kind of be an example. I've done some work with Saks Fifth Avenue back in the day. So, I've done private contracting, as well as government contracting for the private industry and as well as the government side of things. So I've worked for all the three-letter agencies that I know of and some that I can't name. Most of them being like the CIA. I've worked with the NSA. I've worked with the DOD, DOJ, mostly with the DEA, investigating narco terrorism, counterintelligence and countersurveillance against the Taliban for years. And I did 8 tours in Afghanistan and other wonderful regions of this earth that are not considered to be the most fun places in the world you want a vacation. So there you go.
All right. So now back to the NSA. I didn't actually watch the briefing at Congress because politics are kind of boring to me.
Oh yeah,
But I
C-SPAN, that's a hot watch, man. I'm telling you.
yeah, but what I did get out of it is that they strongly suggested they be allowed to restart their public spying that they allegedly had stopped after Snowden said they were doing it,
In
which if you
theory,
believe
they said
that,
they stopped. I didn't
you
say they
believe
did
that.
stop. They might have paused for a while, but my belief is that they're revving it back up.
Yeah, they're just
Just
looking for
because
explicit permission.
they are asking for permission this time, which is kind of interesting because the first time that this happened, was 9/11ish. Within the time frame after 9/11, had happened, and we didn't know what was going on. And if you go back in the way back when machine back in 2000, 2001, our communications between our different agencies did not exist.
Right.
FBI couldn't talk to the CIA, CIA couldn't talk to the NSA, NSA didn't really exist
Right.
on paper. They existed, but they didn't exist, as an agency until they got named as an agency by the president,
Right.
Bush, who did that. So then you look at, then they had other agencies that had to follow under that. Then you had, and some that were created. He had a Joint Special Operations Command, Joint Cyber Command that was created. You had, and some other, agencies that were rolled into one
Right.
to
Like
make a better,
JTTF and everything.
yeah, to make a better spy agency, basically.
Right.
And they took some government, they took some military as well as private government and kind of meshed them together. So they took some stuff from the NSA that you can see about in the Snowden papers, which is no big deal. They took, some parts of the United States Army, the 505th and the 801, and crammed it into, a Joint Special Operations Command, which they did. That's how they named it. But then also took the technologies and kind of meshed them together as well. So you had military as well as spy agencies now coordinating real time in the field, through CENTCOM. CENTCOM is what orchestrates all of our wars. It's basically the gathering hub of where all the information comes in and is dispersed out. So,
Right. And I saw something, somebody posted the article on LinkedIn and I responded to it. I was like, it sounds like Patriot Act 2.0. And the responses I got were that I was crazy. They, they didn't say that. Like, am I the only one who has ever read a history book or lived through 2002?
Yeah, in the United States, our memories fade real quick and fade real fast, and we forget the history of some of these things that have happened in the past. Chris Krebs has talked about that. So there's a lot of stuff that you see that people just forget about. Petya, non-Petya, WannaCry, stuff's still out there, man. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still floating around. Blue Crush, Sequel Slammer, these things that we all thought were long since gone, still active.
These
Still,
macro viruses are coming back. Who
yeah,
uses macros? Really?
people that do Excel spreadsheets. I mean, it's still a thing. Some people use them, some people don't. I mean, I've used macros in the past. I'm a sinner, so I mean, for
Right.
doing some formulations that I needed to get done. But the thing though too is I look at it like this: is that how the landscape of these things have changed over the years. And so forth. We have gotten a lot better at looking at other countries, who are our friends and who are not our friends. And we've also looked at now internally how domestic terrorism has actually, changed things, from white nationalism to Proud Boys to
Right.
the Promise was the Oath Keepers,
Oath keepers.
all these the militia groups or whatever you want to call them. That has really kind of tripped the wire, of saying, hey, can we do what we did back in the past? We
Right.
just had an insurrection, of our government.
How many
you know
ISIS fighters did we find 5 years ago?
yeah, I mean,
How hard is it to do the same?
right. I mean, and they're talking about spending $2.4 billion on the Capitol, for infrastructure, new policing,
Right.
barricades, facial recognition, I mean, a lot. I mean, probably, a better armed resistance, if something does happen again.
Right.
We just had someone, unfortunately, try to run a barricade and unfortunately killed one of the, officers that was there this week, which is very sad, and injured another. And that person was killed, from trying to run that barricade, and they said that he might have had mental issues, that were involved. So then this is not a political debate, but this is the people's house. This is our
Yeah.
government. We try to open our government up for transparency because we want people to participate in government.
Right. Whether you
We
like the person sitting at the desk or not,
Right, whether you voted
it's
for
the
them or not, the
building.
whole the building, is it has history, it has a lot of stuff that's of the American ideal that's behind it. Whether that's whether that's obtainable or not is still up for discussion.
Right.
But they're talking about spending a lot of money to upgrade this security, for a public place, and also that has a lot of monuments in it. If you've ever taken a tour of it, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful building. A lot of history in that building. A lot of great mosaics. A lot of great paintings. A lot of great statues and sculpture that's actually in the building. For people to take tours of and whatnot. And there's certain areas where the public can and can't go. Which is understandable. I mean, you're not supposed to be on. I mean, you can go to the
Right.
gallery, but you're not supposed to be on the floor. Because that's reserved for the people that you have voted for to be able to do these things. Um, and it's a really great building, and and I don't want it to turn into a fortified fortification, and I
Right.
don't
And
think there's a lot of people that
starting to
want that
look like that. If you see pictures of armed National Guard in the street, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is
And that's
very
that's some
terrifying.
Banana Republic stuff. You see
Mhm.
that in shows about foreign countries.
Yep.
And
Especially when
it's terrifying to
uh,
see here.
you got razor wire, surrounding a building with anti-climb fences, and spike strips that are behind them. So if the man when people jump over the fence, they land on spikes.
Right.
Very, very terrifying stuff. Hopefully, we are going to find a way, and I know that there is a way to
Sure.
be able to secure that building, and secure those grounds, not only for the generalized public, but if there ever was something that happened again, like an insurrection, to where that building could be fortified, to where that building could be defended, to protect the people's vote, to protect the people's freedom, because that's what it's about.
Right.
Whether you agree with me or not, that's fine. That's your own political thing. I try to be political, as I tell people. I
Right.
blame everybody, because there are some things that, as we've learned in foresight, these things could have been done to help protect, the people's government, and unfortunately we had, one officer that's actually there on, in the policing force commit suicide, and another one that actually died, from getting sprayed, they haven't put the autopsy out, but probably sprayed or from inhalant from bear mace, and
Right.
died from that and hurt his lungs. So, and probably caused him to asphyxiate, which is a horrible, horrible way to go, horrible death.
The only
And
thing I fear is that they'll use this kind of stuff as justification for another 9/11. Like I said, Patriot Act 2.0.
well, we've seen this before, where the ends justify the means. At least that's how some
Right.
people look at it, and
But how,
we
what's the quote? If you give freedom for safety, you deserve neither.
that's right. There that has been a running question, with EFF,
Right.
ACLU, is that people will give up freedom for privacy and protection. They will give up, God-given intellectual freedom that we have in this country that some countries don't. Total freedom for security, to feel safe,
Right.
they'll give up some of their freedom to be able to do that. I will not, no, 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 no. I will not give up some of my God-given freedom for in the sake or under the banner of you're saying it's going to help me be more secure, right? There's ways of going about it to where you will not infringe on people's inalienable rights, so that you can give them security.
Right.
I do agree that it could be used as a stepping stone for a 9/11-ish kind of law, that we went too deep, too far, too fast, and did
Right.
not have a lot of oversight. And I agree with, some people that don't agree with me on that is that I think there should have been a little bit more transparency. But, the thing is, every government has its secrets. It's that simple.
Sure.
It's that simple. You're never going to have a Julian Assange total transparency of government, no matter how hard you try. Edward Snowden, went too deep, too far, and gave up too many secrets about what the
Right.
government is doing, in the sake of having a public debate about some of those things. Now, I agree with some of those, and some of those I very much disagree with. There are certain technologies that need to be sacrosanct for us for an offensive offense, against foreign actors. You know, we
Right.
should have certain technologies that belong to us, that's ours, intellectual property and all, to be able to be used against foreign actors that are trying to destroy, maim, and murder Americans. It's that simple. Al Qaeda has said that. They said without a doubt, we will kill Americans, one, two, and their allies, which is a lot of folks. I mean,
Yeah.
British, Spanish. I mean, list goes on and on. So, could it be done that way? Yes. Have we learned from the Patriot Act? Yes, yes, we have.
I I
But
agree, but I kind of want to push back with have we?
yeah, because I mean, the and how the laws are written for that is it's based around the FISA court, and that's a whole different court of, than it is for a public court to be
Right.
able to debate these things. Okay.
See,
Um,
the only thing I want to said kind of push back is no dictator ever sat up on the pulpit twirling his mustache and laughing at his evil plan.
mhm.
It's always been under the guise of this is for you. This is your own good. This is going to
Right.
help you.
Yeah. Go back to sleep. The government will take care of you kind
Right.
of idea. I understand. And I agree with that. And my view, since I've worked in government forever, I mean, I've made out of my 26-year career in working in cybersecurity, almost 20 of those, except for 6, have been in government, and I've worked with a lot of different military branches. I've heard a lot of different arguments, and it's the same thing. It's a regime change, when you go from Republican to Democrat, depending on the cycle of the voting, that happens, in our country. And then there's a change of government, and then those laws and some of those things change. They get better, they get worse,
Right.
and then some of them get completely rewritten. And then some
They
of them
get rid
get
of stuff just because the person had a D or an R behind their name.
right, right. DNR. Yeah, that's how some people look at it. The one thing that makes it very interesting is that some of the laws that are out there are so old, they're barbaric in terms of where we are today.
Right.
Um, and
There's an entire book. I think they're called Blue Laws, where
yes,
it's a felony to wash your hands in a national park and any faucet not designated for hand washing.
right, right. So it's kind of under that banter, in a way.
Right.
Um, and I look at it, as we need to update a lot of the laws that we have to become current. We need to take some of those older laws, get them off the books, because some of them are from 1996. They have no real world appearance in today. And then some of them we need to be able to update,
Right.
and have a lot of legal scholars and have some lawyers and have a very healthy debate, with GSA and CISA, and a lot of the regulators to take a look at these things and say, is this for the betterment of the good? Is this the betterment for the people? Does this protect children? Does this protect the elderly? Does this protect HIPAA laws? Does this protect, client information, credit card information? A lot
Right.
of the basic things that we, have on the books now, but just need to be refreshed every now and then.
And
Um,
that's something I do agree with, that we need to get CISA, DISA,
yep,
GSA. They need to be the ones advising, not lobbyists and politicians that are so old they precede the internet.
right. That don't
You know,
understand the
they don't
technology.
know what
And
a PDF is. Don't write laws on.
yeah, what's an IP address? And they go,
Yeah.
don't know what that is. Can we get some nerds to come in here? I
Right.
mean, I love hearing it, when they talk about that. There's a thing on John Oliver when they were talking about cybersecurity, and they were talking about, and not everybody thinks about it. And they also talk about Bitcoin and all the kind of stuff that goes with it, and how it's, monetary, de-anonymized, autonomous paying system. And they hadn't have a clue. I mean, you can look at these faces, deer in headlights, like they don't have a clue what we're,
Right.
anybody these technicians are talking about. Same thing when they talked about, digital voting machines. These guys didn't know, what's the difference between a
Anything.
macro SD card versus an HHD versus how does it connect with an internet proxy, and these guys are just like deer in headlights. I mean, they are just spooked out of their brains because they don't understand the technology. They don't understand the terminology, and they don't have a consistent view of dealing with technology as a technologist. They're lawyers, they're legal people. They are politicians. They don't really understand the mechanics of what it is that we deal with, behind that curtain every
Do
day.
you remember them struggling when they were questioning Zuckerberg?
Oh yeah, it was
How they were
horrible.
struggling to understand even what
Yeah,
Facebook does.
yeah. And Zuckerberg's like, you go, well, how do you make money? We sell advertising. That's their number one thing. They're an advertising platform. If you want to go back into the way back when machine, and you can pull it up on Google or any of the other search engines out there, you can go back to when the Cult of the Dead Cow, and the Loft, were, I mean, this is back in the 90s,
Is that like
were brought in
Cicada
front.
3301?
Yeah, they were brought in to Congress, to talk about the internet. And this is when we had was called the V chip, when they were trying to put chips on televisions to limit
Yeah.
violence based
The parental
around the,
control chip. I
the
had a
parental,
TV with one of those.
yeah, the parental control chip that was installed. I mean, they were trying to, they were fighting for those rights, and I mean, this is pre Jeremy Hammond, doing his hacks. This is, pre anonymous, I mean, these guys were up there talking like, and they're like, well, can you take down the internet? They're like, yeah, give me 15 minutes, man. I can blow it straight up. I mean, it's,
And that's still true
and they were,
today.
Yeah, I mean, they were still talking about how emerging technology is going to change based around Moore's law. It's like this stuff is going to get exponential, and you're going to need to have regulation, and you're going to have people that know this stuff because it's not going to stop. The train's
Right.
done
By the
left the
time you
station.
finish drafting your policy on this thing, it's going to be obsolete.
Right. And that's the thing is you can't take a year to write a bill. You can't take X amount of time to do this. I mean, this stuff changes very quickly. I mean, it's like snap, 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 snap. It's changing. But I mean, I actually watched that. And then I remember when Microsoft, when Bill Gates got carted out in front of Congress, and he gave them a tongue lashing, and they didn't understand anything he was talking about. And, he threatened, in a very kind of pompous way, I'm going to move my company to Canada. I'll just quit selling Microsoft in the United States if I feel like it, if I wanted to. I mean, it's my
And
company. I do whatever I want. Yeah.
imagine if he would have followed through.
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't an empty threat. I mean, they took it for
What would
real.
be we be
And
using
it
right
was
now?
he wasn't kidding. He's like, look, dude, I'm in Redmond. I can just jump over to Canada, no questions asked. And Canada rolled out the carpet. They were like, come on, we come to Quebec. We will, build stuff for you, give you anything you want. Land and property taxes will be cut.
Right.
We will find you people to help staff, your company. And I think he thought about it for a minute, but then he kind of backed down because I mean he was very arrogant, at that time because Microsoft was the king. Linux was not really around.
Right. And Apple
Linux was,
barely existed.
yeah, like Apple was like, Steve Jobs was, out, and doing next, and and the sugar water was making the company go down, was trying to get
Right.
rid of it and sell it. And Scully was trying to, run it in the dirt. It was a bad time for Apple, and then I mean, we didn't even. I mean, this was before those times even happened, and they were talking about this stuff. And yet again, we don't learn from our history lessons. It takes America, and sometimes technology and legal and a lot of these folks to get their teeth kicked in really hard to kind of learn that's a bad thing.
Right.
Once they kind of get punched in the face, or they get hit with the bat across the head, then they start realizing this is, it's always reactionary, it turns into something bad. So do I see a lot of these spy agencies, a lot of these companies start taking a look at domestic terrorism as a threat? The answer is yes. The answer is
Right.
yes. It is here. It ain't going nowhere. I hope we do not have like a Stasi, set up kind of way in the government, to where they're, with warrantless taps, on phones and communications and data mining huge amounts of data, more than Google probably already is doing now on
Right.
us, in our buying patterns and everything else, and like Cambridge Analytica was,
Yeah.
and using that, data and technology that we have, which is a vast amount that the government does have to investigate, people for no reason. If they are, let's say, a member of the Ku Klux Klan, or they're a white nationalist,
Right.
or they're a domestic terrorist, there should be a flow process to prove this person is part of this group, right? So it's like no different than when I work on disc forensics. Yes, this person is a child molester. Okay, well, prove to me how they're a child molester or a
Right.
pedophile, because we found this information on their computer.
Right.
We have reports from family members. We have testimony of a girl that would issue a warrant for their arrest,
Right.
right? Or that would at
Prove,
least,
prove they did it or plan to do it.
right. So, there has to be intent. It's like everything else, like, what I deal with, when I deal with lawyers, everything's proven, by intent. What was the intent of this for that to happen, whatnot. So there has to be, some kind of paper trail checks and balances that needs to be put in place. First off, whether this person is a Ku Klux Klan member or Black Lives Matter or whatever group, I don't care. I really don't care. I do care about their initial freedom that is given to them.
Right.
Whether
If you want to commit a
whatever their ideology,
crime, then you have to face the legal system.
that's right. Whatever their ideology is, don't care. I do care about the inherent God-given freedom in the United States that's given to them, freedom of speech, certain laws that apply back to that, and they should be protected for those things, right? Now, the intent is they're using those things for bad, which is not good. So yes, then there should be a way to where we would be able to look at these people, through not only a lens that's wide, but also a lens that's narrow.
Right.
You know, I don't think that there should be, blanket warrantless wiretaps.
Right. We shouldn't be able to look at their text between them and their mom if we don't suspect their mom of being
Right.
Nazis or
You know,
whatever.
maybe it runs in the family. Don't know, but I
Right.
mean, they could
But
find
if,
out.
but if we don't think, I mean, text with their coworkers or their boss,
Right.
what's
Yeah.
what's the scope? We have to deal with scope in our job.
Hmm.
I can't just go randomly start slapping a keyboard of some random computer without that being in scope.
Absolutely.
Now, for
Um,
what it is worth, looks like they did walk it back and say that's not what they meant.
that's good. That's good. And the thing though too is that there, and this is a healthy debate that we have to have. You know, with our forefathers that wrote the Constitution, the Bill of Rights and everything else goes with that. You know, um, we haven't learned a lot in our civics lessons yet.
No.
We just haven't. We just haven't.
They
Um,
don't even teach civics in school anymore.
I mean, that we just haven't learned our civics the way that it needs to be. Is that, there is a separation between church and state, right? Simple as that. God, Jesus, Buddha, whatever it is you pray to, whatever your God is over here, and then government is over here, right?
Right.
There's a divide for a reason. Same reason why we have three different branches of government.
That
One
divide.
cannot supersede the next. There's separations and checks and balances that are put in place to make sure that one part of our government is not, in control of the other, or in control of all of it. So, um, hopefully they did walk it back. Hopefully we will debate this and talk about this more in the future. When we start taking a look at, do we want to use cyber on these people? Do we want to use counter surveillance, counterintelligence, to gather information on them? What is going to be the intent, the scope, as you said, and then on top of that, what's going to be legally admissible in court? If this person did commit a crime or did not commit a crime or is planning to commit a crime, um, you know, uh, your ideology thought is not a crime.
Right.
This is not 19.
Posting a meme,
Yeah,
a ill-conceived meme, a
yeah.
crime.
This is 1984. It's not some Orwellian kind of bullshit I'm talking about here. I'm talking about legal precedent.
Right.
I'm talking about how we can actually charge a person for doing something that's wrong. If they're going to go shoot up a school and whatnot, and we
And then
prevent that,
stop them.
that's awesome. We can prevent that. That's awesome. If we can prevent them from killing someone that's been voted into a government because that person
Right.
ran a campaign,
Or
got
killing
voted
anybody
in,
for that matter.
right, got voted
Forget a
in.
politician, just a random person.
Yeah, I mean, got whoever, politician versus somebody who works, as a bag checker. I don't care, and we've seen that in Colorado. So you have people that are
Right.
severely mentally ill that have access to firearms,
Right.
and just go in and commit a mass shooting and carnage will ensue. I'm a very huge, gigantic gun rights activist. I own firearms, a lot of firearms, and I love guns. But the thing though too is that I'm mentally
I don't love
capable, and I
lunatics with guns.
right, I'm not committing a crime. These are for home protection. These are for shooting. Competitions that I like to go to. And I've had to arm up for the military and so forth. And the other thing though too is I hunt. I'm a huge sportsman. I enjoy hunting and fishing. And on my own property. And I follow the law for that too. There's laws that the
Right.
Wildlife Federation to put in.
You have
And
tags and everything. You can't exceed that.
right. So and that's the fun thing about where it is I have a lot of access to game to eat, because I do eat what I eat what I kill. You cannot grill it till you kill it. So every time you get a steak, think about old Cal, old Bessie out there, it had to come from somewhere. you know
Right.
Same thing. Fish came from the sea or from a pond, so you gotta realize that it just doesn't magically appear in Kroger, or wherever you buy groceries.
Right. Why
So,
would you kill
you
an
gotta,
animal? Just go to the grocery store and buy it.
that's right. You got to kill it, before you can grill it, as I tell people. So that argue that debate with me that are vegetarians, still. So, but I'm a huge fan of fully automatic, semi-automatic, and handguns. I have a lot of those, in my armory here I have here at home, not only to protect myself and protect my family, but also for sporting. But I am very much against the mentally ill or the impaired. Based around some of the laws that we have, which are very good laws. We have some great gun laws, and we have some great things to do background checks, and we have these great things that are there. They're just not really implemented very well.
Right.
And if you've ever worked with the government, that their background checks and screenings and all this kind of stuff, it really needs to be streamlined. It needs to be better. You can ask anybody that's worked, at a gun store or anything. I've seen people literally that have top secret security clearance from the government be denied a handgun license.
Right, because they're flagged for some reason. That
But
happens.
you don't ever find out what that reason is, right?
Right.
Same thing is, I've seen
I've,
people
I've had
that
a buddy denied access to a flight because something popped under their name, but they've got top secret with poly.
right, and it's like this person's been through more background screens than you could ever imagine.
Than
And
anybody in this building.
oh yeah, more than anybody. And it's one of those things you're just kind of like, wow, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard of in my life. And same thing is that it needs to be better, regulation, and there needs to be, I'd say better regulation systems. The regulation's fine, right? The gun laws we have are perfectly fine. I cannot go out there and buy an M60. It's as simple as that. Fully automatic, belt fed, 100 round a minute, gun. Don't need that. You do not need that for personal use. I don't know why.
So, I mean, if you've ever done a fully auto Glock 19 at the range,
oh yeah,
fun.
yeah. I mean, you can have an F1, F2, and F3 firearms license like I do. That's perfectly fine. But as I tell people, I'm not some gun nut, or whatnot. And there's a lot of people out there that are part of gun culture that I really do love. And I respect because, they've always said, and we've always said this, is that the background screening systems need to be streamlined better, because sometimes it's done state to state. Sometimes it's done, it needs to be a unified base system.
Right.
We do need to have a better database, for them to be able to pull from. When people do go, like, say, if I went to Tennessee, I can't buy, this tickles me to death. I live in Mississippi. I can buy any gun I want. It's like Texas. I can buy anything I want, whatever I want, whenever I want, as long as I have the licenses for it and the money. But if I go to Tennessee, I can't buy a handgun, but I can buy a long gun. So I can go buy an AR-15 all day long, with a 100-round magazine, but I cannot buy, a standard 38 special or a 357 Magnum or a Glock. I cannot, or any other
Right. Just
handgun.
go down the list.
Go down the list of a manufacturer, which just tickles me to death because it's kind of like, wow, I can buy this gun over here that they call an assault rifle, which is not really an assault rifle. So assault is an action, people. It's considered to be a long gun.
I have an assault broomstick if you come in my house.
I have an assault bat, I've got an assault foot that I will, kick you with. So assaulting is an action, but it's a long gun. I could buy a shotgun, I could buy a rifle, I could buy a scope, and then all I need is a bell tower, and then I can go to town, do whatever I want to do. I mean, this, as I tell people, it goes back to intent. It goes back to the laws that are already standing, and then how we can integrate better technology and then better ways of streaming those laws and those systems that are already existing on the books. We don't need more laws.
And I think that's something that we as IT people, as security professionals, as application developers, as database management, we can really have we can help this out if we're given the chance.
Very much true. I agree with that.
What was just recently with the state of Florida and I'm sure it happened elsewhere, but this was the big one in the news here, was their unemployment database was 30 years old and just being maintained. And back in March last year,
probably melted.
It did. and they had spent millions of dollars maintaining this thing, and the first stress test, it
It
just
blew.
blew up.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to be able to step in as a community, as a profession, and point this kind of stuff out. Like, hey, this system is flawed. Here's how we can make it better.
Well, there's two. That's great, and I like, when people do gray hat hacking, um, and they
I
see
didn't even
something
mean
that's
it
wrong.
necessarily as hacking, because just for example, sitting here, we know that there is no centralized database
Right,
that gun manufacturers, for example, can pull from, or gun
right,
retailers can pull from. Well, we just need a database admin, to a couple of them, to put one together and say, hey,
right. I
look,
mean,
this
and
can
you look
work.
at it like this. Does the ATF have the will and the manpower to be able to do something
Do
like
they
that?
want to
Because
spend the money for
and
that?
do they want to spend the money, to do that? Because you got 50 states, and then you've got two principalities, that you have to pull from to be able to do this.
Right.
So you have to say to yourself, does the ATF, who regulates, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, want to go out there and build a centralized repository and database to, do background checks correctly, and to do it based around the laws that are already on the books based today.
And
And
even
how is that?
at a
How
state
is that?
level,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's got to go to a state level because each state's doing
because
something different.
does do you think Nowhere County, Mississippi has digitized their court records?
No, no, not
Because
not even not even close. I
if
mean,
we
it's
if we try to pull a records request from them, it's going to be boxes full of paperwork.
right.
And John Doe felon who beat somebody to death 20 years ago is going to be able to walk in and buy a gun because he got missed.
Right. And that's what scares me, is that people that have committed high crimes, should not be able to buy firearms. People that are mentally disabled or mentally impaired should not be able to fire arms.
The only question, the only
And the computer
issue I have with
industry.
that
Mhm.
is who decides that you're disabled. Because up until I think a few years ago, that the medical journal considered people who are transgendered as mentally ill. Would you, that's changed recently, that it's
Yeah.
considered not mentally ill, but 5 years ago they couldn't buy a firearm because they were considered mentally ill.
Right.
Who decides that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and that's a very hard answer too.
Right.
Under the administration now, transgender people can join the military.
Right.
Well, guess what?
They get
Military
guns.
got guns.
Right.
So and the military will help you with your transition. And I don't care. Everybody should fight.
Right.
Remember, I've lived in Israel. Grandma
Everybody
Habib that
fights.
is inside a wheelchair is carrying an AK-47. She gonna fight. I mean, everyone fights. It's that simple. It doesn't matter what you do in your bedroom or not. As long I don't really care, as long as it's not with a 5-year-old or a goat. I don't care. I mean, I really
Right.
honestly don't care. But everybody fights. So guess what? Everybody should have the
Well,
right to bear guns. I mean,
and
everybody.
even there, I mean, child soldiers,
Yep.
their bullets are just as effective as that
I
war
mean,
torn
if
soldier who's been
you
doing it 20 years.
That's right. I mean, if you're 15 and above, in Israel, congratulations, you're armed.
Right.
And the women are armed too. That's why there is pretty much zero rape, inside Israel whatsoever, because women is first off, chicks with guns are hot, and I mean, when they're carrying a fully automatic, FNFAL, that's no messing
No
around,
cat calling.
no, you are not going to sexually harass a woman that is carrying a gun that could put a hole in you about the size of my coffee cup. I mean, that's
Right.
just not going to happen. So as I tell people, in the security industry, and especially in IT, we love guns. I mean, we love guns. You go to Black Hat, they actually have to where you can go to a firing range with them and shoot guns that you never get to shoot. you know but the thing though too, in my house, I don't need a Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle, that can
No.
punch a hole in a tank. I really don't need one. I'd like to have one, but I really don't need one.
That's just
Um,
so you can go outside and put a hole through 6 refrigerators
right. I mean,
a mile away.
I'd defend your right to totally have one if you can have one, but I mean, that's $25 a bullet, bro. I mean, that's pretty expensive, to fire one of these bad boys off. But if you want it and you can afford it and you do the background checks and you get the licenses and everything else that goes with it, congratulations, spend your money, go get one.
Right. And if
What you do
the
with it,
problem is if you jump through all those hoops, I would assume you're pretty law abiding.
correct. You
I
know,
don't think you're going to go commit mass murder after you've jumped through 75 hoops and 50 government agencies have your name and information on
and your
record.
fingerprints and everything else. The same thing is like, you should not be able to buy an M4 grenade launcher. I mean, that's a
Right.
military. There are certain things that belong in the military. There's certain things that belong in the hunting world, defense industry, home defense industry,
Right.
personal defense, and then so forth. And I defend
Now,
that all day long.
I
But you
would I
should
would
not.
like an MRAP though.
Right, but I mean, I don't see any reason why a person should own a saw. I mean, really, I mean, that's a
Right.
belt-fed, weapon. If you've ever seen the movie Swordfish, John Travolta pulls one of those suckers out of the trunk and just mows down cars like no tomorrow.
Right.
In that scene with Hugh Jackman, I mean, he pulls out a saw that's got a huge belt-fed, bag that's onto it, and and he just mows down. I mean, that thing will mow down vehicles. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's anti-personnel,
Right. You
anti-vehicle, light
cannot
vehicle
claim that's
weapon.
for home defense.
You do not need that, for home defense. You just don't. You just don't.
You know,
And I live in a state that's got, the gunslinger law and the castle law and all this kind of stuff for personal carry. My wife can carry a gun in her purse, no questions asked, throughout the entire state. Nobody's going to say a damn thing. Right.
right.
Same thing. I've got a gun in my vehicle. Nobody says anything. Not even my kid. It's just in there just in case I ever need it. I could carry one on me, but I don't want to. I mean,
Right.
first off, I'm a little fat, so I don't want to carry a gun. But I mean, as long as I don't carry it into like a school or
Federal building.
the federal building or the post office. I mean, and
Right.
I don't want to be taking a gun on and off again in the car, and trying to put on a seatbelt and you got a gun next to you. It's okay. Get the seatbelt in and everything, you get situated, blah, blah. Or I have to, take it out and put it in a secured locker in my car, which is the smart thing to do,
Right.
or a secured location in my car and have to lock the glove box or whatever I've got in there. So I mean, to me, it's just like, okay, you can have one in your vehicle all day long. You have one on you all day long. I don't care. As long as you're not walking around, in Kroger with an AK-47, don't
Right.
care. Don't care.
And then you get
If you
those.
are walking around, Walmart with an AK-47, I hope you're part of law enforcement, or I hope you're part of,
Right.
you've
Or
got the proper
expect to be
licenses and you've been
questioned.
trained on how to be able to use that, kind of weapon, because I mean, it is not the norm here, but in other countries it is, to be armed, when you're shopping, or when you're at a recreational place, at the beach,
Right.
anywhere like that, because I know that if you've got that kind of weapon, you've been trained and you've gone through all those hoops, right, that you were just talking about, and the law and the defenses and everything that goes around that law. Does that make
Right.
sense? And the laws that abide by the state and that abide by the nation. So you understand proper gun safety rules and laws that are enacted with it. And hopefully we can see the same thing in the IT security industry. When you're talking about looking at domestic terrorists, or looking at internal threats and everything and so forth. Hopefully we can abide by the same, rules that would enact that as we would look at any other engagement with the military, right? Did this group do something bad? Like, did the Proud Boys or
Right.
Oath Keepers or whatever, when there
You get
was
to
an
blow up that
insurrection,
whole village just because you think somebody's in there.
right? That did the people that did the siege on the Capitol. They've already arrested. It's one of the biggest. I mean, it's literally the biggest manhunt
Right.
in our
Even private
history.
companies are, hey, yeah, that's
Right.
my employee. They live here.
All 50 states have been activated to find these people that did this horrible thing, which they did do.
Right. I
Um,
think Pinterest helped find one.
yeah, I mean, the kicker is there's a barricade and there are police there that are protecting that building for a reason, right? You can yell at them all day long, but it's like a cop. As soon as you touch them, that's when the gloves come off.
Right.
That's when and you cross that barricade, that's when the rules do not apply of you being a protester now to becoming something else.
Right.
And I hope, first off, in our history, in our country, or at least in my lifetime, I have seen a lot of governmental change. I've seen the Berlin Wall come down. I've seen countries, change dictators, from Libya, Myanmar, Burma. There's been, huge, gigantic, shifts. I've seen the Cold War end in my lifetime. Not a lot of people can say that.
Right.
I've seen the rise of domestic terrorism, in our country, starting with Oklahoma City, with Timothy McVeigh.
Right.
And that, because that's
Brzezinski.
really one of the most starting points. That was based around, his, revenge against the Branch Davidians that were in Texas. And we don't learn a lot from our civics and our history. We're not keeping up with a lot of these world affairs that are ending up, affecting us in our own country. And is it divisive politics? Absolutely. I look at it, people have made it a right or a left issue. They've made it a, Latino or Black or Caucasian or Asian issue. It's a people issue. Okay. It's not a color issue. It's a people issue. It's like these people, this group of people, want to do massive harm to another group of people, right? That needs to stop. And here's the reasons why. And then we've got the precedent, we've got the paperwork, we've got the intelligence that's put behind that. And then we would have to, have the ability to stop that for the betterment of the good. And I think that if we enact some of those policies, first off, they need to be in the public, they need to be debated, they need to be talked about, and like you said, they walk some of it back. So that's a good thing. It means that they're paying attention. And the other thing, though, too, is we should have the ability, uh, to somehow be part of that process, either
Audit
vote
it.
for it
You have to be able
or
to audit it as well. We
and be
have
able
to
to audit
know
it.
what's going on. As at the moment, I think
Right.
there's no a FOIA request doesn't apply to that court.
That's true. And the other thing too is, there's, like I said, there's a lot of legalese that's got to be done
Right.
behind this, because we not only, even though they're violating the law, they still need to be able to have their own personal rights protected.
Yeah.
And the thing, though, too, is, and I don't want that to happen in our country, to where we're sacrificing freedom, like you said, at the beginning, for security, because I don't want to see that. I don't ever want to see that happen, and at least in my lifetime. I don't ever want to see that. I want to be able to have this healthy debate between, what is my, institutional I'm sorry, not institutional, constitutional rights that, are given to me as an American citizen, versus the laws that I might have broken. And we
Right.
need to be able to balance that. That's
That's
the act.
why there isn't firing squads, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do get your day in court regardless of what you've done.
And you will be judged by your peers,
Right.
in a court of law. We have these things set up for a very good reason. And same thing is, there's some very good gun, the gun laws are very good, but are we enacting those policies to the
Right.
best we possibly can? Absolutely not.
And there's
Um,
there's something from that these agencies, all these people can take from the security world. It's continuous
yeah,
monitoring. What can we do better?
right. And that's the thing, that, speaking with the talking about doing better, I actually have, now I'm not repping this book, I don't sell it, I've never read it, but actually reading Sandworm. I actually got it today, from Amazon. So I'm looking forward to actually reading this. This was um the attack that happened on the Ukraine. When the Russians attacked the Ukrainians, turned off all their power, turned off
Right.
all their electrical. And then there's other things that's actually been written, about in this book, about dealing with viruses and state nations and so forth. So I'm actually looking forward to reading that.
So you had
So that was
mentioned, changing topics just a little bit. You had mentioned Cambridge Analytica and not learning your lesson. Did you hear
oh yeah.
about Facebook?
My
500
views
plus
on Facebook.
million phone numbers, emails, and everything that were leaked this week.
Yeah, they had a Yahoo kind of moment, I give them that. Um, first off, I like what Mark Zuckerberg did for the world. First off, the communications. I have I have a bittersweet relationship with Facebook. First off is my mom and dad will never be on my Facebook account, like, ever. Most of my relatives, fuck them, they are never getting access to any of my Facebook anything, because I will troll people. I mean, I am not, I've been in Facebook jail, I think 4 or 5 times now, for some of the crap I say, because I really don't have a filter. My filter pretty much on Facebook is my wife, because she'll come up here and say, take that post off. It's like,
Right.
you're gonna get in trouble. So
Stop while you're ahead.
yeah. So I have a bittersweet relationship with Facebook, because here's the one instance. My watch. Okay. I'm a big Seiko G-Shock fan. Most people know what these watches are. You can buy them at Walmart. They're very inexpensive, but I like this special brand of G-Shock that I've had for years. The same one I've had for probably 10, 15 years. Soon as one dies, I go buy the exact same watch again, except this one is kind of a little bit different. They kind of make the same make and model. They just kind of add a couple more features to it. You know what I'm saying? But it's the watch I like. Okay. And I was on Amazon looking for that watch, looking for something kind of like that watch. I couldn't find the real, because I didn't know the make and the number of this one, because I had lost it, but I knew what it looked like, right? So I'm like, you looking through watches through Amazon, and Amazon, just trolling, going through, and then I go to Facebook, about 2 days later, I start getting all these ads for watches that are
Hmm.
Seiko popping up, while I'm going down my feed. Seiko watches 25% off from this retailer, and I'm like, okay, I know what they're doing.
Right.
They know that I'm looking for a new watch, and they're trying to do suggestive selling, like you would in marketing, to me to buy a new watch, right?
That happened
And
to my wife 2, 3 days ago. I was on my computer. She goes to a completely different school. She's only ever searched for her school. I was on my computer showing her the school I go to, trying to get her to switch, save some money.
right,
No less than an hour later, she's on Instagram and she gets an ad for my school.
yeah,
She
and
didn't even search it on her device.
right. It doesn't matter. I mean, they
Came from the
blanket it,
same router.
and I mean, and I'm almost. I mean, here's the deal. I'm on a VPN.
Right.
I'm on
Same
a
here.
VPN. Connected to another country. And I was like going, how did they get this information, about me knowing that I want to buy a new watch? So that's where Facebook kind of like, because I know they're harvesting data. I know they're harvesting credentials. They're buying money from advertisers. They're
And all
buying.
the FANG industry,
Yeah,
Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google,
they're all in it together.
they
They're
share.
all they all share information across the board. They're all, and it's like art selling to artists. I make art to sell to other artists, not to the
Right.
general public, because they would never buy it. That whole kind of pompous kind of thing. So it's kind of like, Amazon selling information to Facebook, Facebook's buying information from Amazon, they're buying from Google, and they're buying, all this data around you. And normally there's about on a disk somewhere out there, whether on the internet, there's about 2 terabytes of data on you
Right.
out there in the web. So every person on this planet, there's about two that that's connected to the internet, has about two, from the time that they've logged in as a child, to the day they practically die, will have between 2 to 12 terabytes of data collectively about them on the internet.
Right.
Birth certificates, death certificates, what they've shot for, what they've bought, whatnot. So I mean, the internet gets very big, and then there's a lot of money to be made out of that 2 to 12 terabytes, right? So I know what they're doing. They're buying my information and data from a
Right.
collection agency like Cambridge Analytica, or US Analytics, so forth. So I mean, it really made me mad, because first off, I don't like, when I'm looking at Facebook, I want to talk to my friends. I want to see how they're doing, see how their kids are doing, how you would be doing, your family, blah, 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 things that are my interest on there, whatnot. I don't want to see adware.
Don't be
but that's what it
right.
is. Because I wanted a new watch, and they are
Hey,
seizing on that as an opportunity. If I buy
buy
it
the
from
new watch from
Facebook,
this ad and you pay us a little bit.
they get a kickback, right? So if I buy that watch from Facebook, that means that this person that sold it, which I have no problem with, whoever I buy, just give me my product, right? I don't care where it came from
Right.
or who did it. Just tell me what I
I
want
don't
to
care
have.
about the advertisement. I care that
Right,
you're spying on me.
right. I just care that you're looking at me for whatever reason to be able to buy sunglasses, or it's just normal stuff that you would look for
Right.
on the internet.
Because you said sunglasses, I'm going to end up getting an ad because,
Yeah,
my phone heard sunglasses and buy in the same sentence.
right. And is Alexa reporting back to these advertisers? You ask yourself sometimes. Is that Echo Dot reporting information back, and analytics on you
Not from my
sometimes?
house, it's not.
So, you know why? Because I don't have one.
Me
And I
neither.
will not have one. I
What
will
was
have no smart media devices, in my
I
house.
seen a really good meme about that. It was an old timey like 50s drawing, and it said 50 years ago, and the guy's whispering to his wife, "Be quiet, the toaster might be listening."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah. I mean, that's the
then
truth
it
now.
said modern day. It's like, "Hey, wiretap, what's the recipe for pancakes?"
Yeah, there was one I saw. I don't know if it was real or not, but this lady goes, "Hi Alexa, are you connected to the
And it
CIA?"
just shuts
It's shut
down.
off. She turns it back on. "Alexa, are you collecting information and sending me back to the CIA?" It turns off again. And I was like, "Oh, that's so creepy." It's kind of like Roomba bots, the vacuums that go around your house.
Right.
That's just initially creepy to me. I don't know why, but I don't want a robot going across my floors, cleaning my floors. I think that's really cool if you got one that
Mapping out your house.
mapping out the floor plan of my house where all my furniture is,
Wasn't
so it
it?
knows where to
It
go.
was Pokemon Go that got banned on military bases because the data was being collected and the base was being mapped out.
Yeah, same thing like Furbies. Furbies remember those toys were a big thing a couple
Those
years back.
even
Could not take one on a military base.
when my parents tried to get me one, I thought that was the creepiest thing
I
back
know,
in
it's
the
just kind of,
early 90s. They
it's
could
like I can't. Maybe it's
they
like
could
that
start
Chucky.
communicating with each other in their own
Yeah.
language.
It's kind of like the Teddy Ruxpin, Chucky syndrome,
Right.
like, "Hi there, let's talk about blah, blah, blah." And it's like grabs a knife. Because I mean, I watched Child's Play and I saw the reboot and the originals, and I loved all of them, because,
I
I'm a
didn't
huge
like the
horror
modern
fan.
one. I didn't like the new one.
Yeah, I'm a huge horror, and sci-fi fan. So it's like, even the B movies that come out, like Shark, like someone
Fangoria
somewhere.
type stuff.
Oh yeah, dude, someone somewhere said, "I got this really great idea," after they smoked a lot of pot, and I'm talking a lot of weed, and ate some, edibles, and said, "I got this great idea, man, about taking a movie and making this movie, man, about sharks in tornadoes." And
Teeth.
somebody greenlit that. Somewhere
Teeth.
down the line, somebody greenlit that.
I
You
just
know?
have one word: teeth.
Yeah, yeah.
That's You've seen that movie?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
someone somewhere down the line said, "Dude, I got this great idea about taking sharks and putting them in tornadoes." I
They
don't know
made like
why.
6 of them, didn't they?
Just unreal. But it's like, and people make fun of Nicolas Cage. I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan. Huge, huge Nicolas Cage fan. He just did this one. That's something in Wonderland, or basically he's basically locked up in a Chuck E. Cheese,
Oh, that's
and
terrifying.
yeah, which terror those things scared the poop out of me.
That's a I really don't like jump scares. I like horror, like gore.
Yeah,
I don't like jump scares. But there's a game, Five Nights at Freddy's, which
it's
is
called. He doesn't say anything in the whole movie, and it's called Willy's Wonderland. And what it is he has a flat tire. The guy says, "Hey, if you clean this place up, your car and everything will be fixed. If you just survive 24 hours in here." And these teenagers try to burn down the building. They end up getting trapped in the building with Nicolas Cage. But the funniest thing about the whole movie is all he does is scream and yell. There's no lines. He doesn't say anything the entire movie. It's just Nicolas Cage. It is the most like it's the most B movie hysterical thing. I mean, it's like Toxic Avenger funny. I mean, like I just
So they just
lost it.
paid him to scream and yell.
That's it.
Probably
And
got paid $1 million.
beat the living crap out of these animatronic, I love you, you love me kind of things. I mean, it's like they're
So
possessed by
you should
Satan.
check out. There's a game called Five Nights at Freddy's. It's it's almost exactly the same. Where you're the night guard at a Chuck E. Cheese,
Mhm.
but the animatronics come alive and try to kill you.
Yeah, there's another Nicolas Cage movie that I'm going to plug real quick. There's one that he did called Mandy, which is just okay. First off, it is insane. I mean, it's like if you're on hardcore drugs or you're on any drugs or any kind of any kind of depressants or any kind of weird medication, do not watch Mandy. It will. I mean, you will be like ah. I mean, you will be like out of your mind insane. Okay, first off, because the movie is crazy. And he's wielding this huge, gigantic axe. That's all I'm going to say about Mandy is do not do drugs or any kind of hallucinogenics, anything like that, and watch Mandy. The next one is called Color Out of Space, which is basically Nicolas Cage in a Lovecraftian kind of movie, like H.P. Lovecraft kind of
Okay.
movie. And it is just pure Nicolas Cage at his best. I mean, like Ghost Rider, Ghost Rider Vengeance, crazy Nicolas Cage, and I just freaking love it. I mean, I don't know why. Just, I love watching his films because first off, that you don't know what to expect out of him, and number two, they're kind of B movie-ish, but he still makes good movies. He makes really horrible B and C kind of movies, but he's still a top list actor. He still is in other movies that are blockbusters.
I
You know,
personally think B movies are better because there's not that. I don't know. Most modern movies have a really corporate feel. They're almost all the same.
yeah, yeah, and
These B movies, they don't have that. There's no multi-billion-dollar film industry. There's not a billionaire company funding them, so they don't
right.
not beholden to shareholders or anything.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole Josh Wheaton, corporate version of, Justice League versus,
Or the
the
nearly
Snyder cut,
5 hour cut.
the 5 hour, which I watched both of them. So, the 5 hour Zack Snyder cut where everybody basically's got a better storyline, and whatnot.
Right.
And it's 4 hours long.
It's freedom.
You look at hi there. I mean, I'm boxed into this corporate kind of thing and I've got to do these things and squeeze them into
Right.
a certain amount
I've
of
got to
time.
do it in 2.5 hours or less.
I got to, very tight knit deadlines, not a lot of really cool stuff that you could do versus like I have total creativity and who cares?
Right.
I have total creativity and do whatever I want, and that's what the same thing in our industry. You're either boxed into where you can only do certain things and that's it. And you
Right.
can't cross that line versus I have total freedom to do whatever it is that I want to be able to do.
Imagine a pen test with unlimited time and unlimited funding. How much could you do?
Woo! Good Lord, you can do a
Versus, look, I've
lot.
only got $10,000 in 2 days. Get it done this weekend.
Yeah, and I've been in that situation and it sucks. First off, because you're getting paid, out of that 10,000. And that's the thing about our industry is it's not very considerate around time, which I look at time as the ultimate commodity.
Right.
I tell people if I cut your arm off, would you much rather have 5 more years with your arm, or $1 million? They're going to take the time with the arm, right?
Right.
Over the $1 million any day of the week, because I wouldn't want to have my arm severed first off and lose that
Right.
appendage. I don't care how much money
And
you give
exchange it
me. I
for
want,
money.
yeah, I'm not going to exchange that for paper currency. I mean, or gold or whatever. I want my arm back.
Right.
So I look at time the same way. It's the ultimate commodity for me. And when you got a one weekend pen test, you can only get so much done,
Right.
And there's
And
so
if
much
you
more that
push
you,
too hard, you take something down on a Sunday night. Well,
yeah.
now
And
that pen
it's,
test just lasted for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday
yeah.
until they get it back up.
And normally, companies, if they are worth their salt, tell someone like that, look, that's just you're not going to get a true test. You're not going to get a true
Right.
reading.
Just make it an analysis. Do
Yeah.
They'll just run OpenVAS on it and run Nessus on it.
Or hit it with Tenable, or Nessus, or, hit it with, like Dark Trace or some other stuff and see what you come up with. Spider it,
See what pops, and
um,
we'll do a risk assessment for all of it.
yeah, I mean, open up, Kali Linux, use some of the tools there, that are already built into the OS and everything, and just kind of give them, a scaled overview, because I mean, that's all you can do in 48 hours.
Right.
Only unless it's like, I want you to test this one specific thing. Now, I've had that happen before with an application test that I did from the network, and it said, all right, here's the IP address, right? This is it. Just go beat it up. We just want to see if you
Right.
get in,
Hey, there's a vulnerability on this application, this
Right,
software. Try to beat this.
right. And that was, I've been in, those are the best, and you got 48 hours to do it, because that's the only time they want to do a threshold test, right? So it makes a big difference. And it's the same thing is that, when I say, okay, normally a pen test is 7 to 14 days. 7 is a short one, especially, and you have to have a good team. If you're a team of one, that is really rough, because you've got to, when do you want me to test? Do you want me to test during production hours, non-production hours?
Right.
That means that you've got to rearrange your family, your life
Can't even
schedule, what
start until
time,
7 p.m., 8 p.m.
right? What time you got to sleep, I worked for a company, 2 to 3 years back, healthcare company, great people, smart people. Hey, we want you to be able to do a pen test on this, application that's going to go golden, which means it's going into production, right?
Right.
So it's that last step right before it goes to the world to play
This is
with
the
it, right?
final image. Make it
Yeah.
perfect.
This is it. You've been part of the whole DevOps process. You've given them information. You've given them guidance. Let's see if they followed, what you were saying. And they gave me 2 days, 48 hours on a weekend, 7 p.m. till 5 a.m. the next day. So Sunday I could stop at 7, but then I had to go back at 7 again that night and then start over again going into Monday. Okay. So I said, okay, well, let's clear it with my boss. Boss cleared it and everything. They said, and I had to change my sleep pattern.
Right.
I had to
For
change
just
what
those
time.
2 days.
Yeah, for the 2 days, and then in the what sucked about it was it was my wife's birthday. So, I had to clear it with the wife. It was okay to do
Right.
this because
Hey,
family
we'll
comes
go to
first.
dinner, but I got to be back by 7.
Yeah. And then it's like, we're going to go out and, it was, we were going out for, our anniversary, kind of, and her birthday, fall within the same month, so I was kind of like, okay, we got anniversary first of the month, birthday at the end of the month. So we've already had our anniversary. Let's have our birthday dinner, and it was with my family and everything. And they were rocking and rolling, having a great time and, whatnot. And at 7 o'clock and I got to leave the restaurant,
Right. You're watching the clock the whole time.
right. And that just, and that's not fun, and I had to eat fast, and say, hey mom, hey dad, hey everybody, how y'all doing, blah blah blah, it's good to
Right. They're
see
all
y'all and
kicking back,
everything.
having drinks, having fun. You
Yeah, I'm kissing my kid on the head. I'll see you when you go to, in the
in the
next
morning.
day. Yeah, the next morning. And I'm, trying to be, a husband to my wife, but then I've got to run home and turn all this on, and get ready to go.
Right.
And here was the thing. They sort of listened to me. I still able to get in, still was able to, because I'm famous for DDoS attacks. So I was able to break it, first off.
Right.
And they didn't do a lot of the secure coding that I had, recommended. They had not put it in the proper Kubernetes, container kind of way. So I was able to get into the container. I was able to stop the processes that were running, and I was able to evade the software that was supposed to be catching me. So to me, that was a success.
Right.
First, I didn't get caught. They didn't see my IP. I was able to get in. I was able to
To
stop
break it.
processes, and I was able to break the application. Congratulations. We're now we're kicking it back, with my report after 2 days of doing that. And then, then you get back to a Tuesday after a Monday, right? And you've done all this work all weekend long. And now it's like, okay, now you got to be back on the clock at 9 o'clock again, So you just went from, going to bed at 5 o'clock and you get 4 hour power nap and then boom, you're right back
Right
at
back
work
at it
again
for a full day of work.
for a full day of work. So you got to write up your reports and do all your kind of wonderful stuff for all your evidence collection, and you are exhausted. I mean, you are first off, you're mentally exhausted, right? Your body physically goes through, what I call, it's actually a clinical thing now. It's called shift work disorder, right? So when you're going from day to night, night to day,
Right. No set schedule.
no set schedule, and this happens in a lot of manufacturing where you have people that work 14 days and then work 14 nights. Yes, they're working days for 2 weeks and they're working nights for 2 weeks. My brother went through that. My brother went through shift work disorder. I mean, he had to take medications. He had to have curtains put into his room and everything like that.
Right, because your
Where,
circadian rhythm's all
yeah,
shot.
jacked up. I mean, and he never got over it. I mean, he hasn't worked for that company now in 3 years, and guess what? He's still, his mind with that. Oh, I have to stay up. But no, you go to bed now at a normal bedtime.
Right.
Well, his mind is telling him
No,
this is your
I
two
got to be
weeks.
working an hour. I can't go to bed.
Yeah, his mind is saying this is your 2 weeks on days versus your 2 weeks on nights. So
Right.
it kind of it's still kind of messing with him, but he's still taking melatonin and stuff to help him go to sleep, to get normal sleep and everything,
Right.
which
Even
is a
with that, you
very.
can get a tolerance and it doesn't work anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's the thing is he doesn't want to build like you're saying, a tolerance for it. And it's really affected some of his mental capacity sometimes, because you're groggy, you got kind of brain fog, they call
Right.
it, because you're
You
kind
don't
of like,
want to be at
oh
work.
yeah, you're like, I don't want to be here, I don't know what's going on, and you're kind of in this lullish state. Which that's one of those things. There are people that like just working days. I mean, I think that manufacturing should be able to do it. Same thing. There are people that need, that only want to work nights, right? Because maybe they work two jobs, or so forth. And that flip flops. Because I mean, I had a job where I worked during days and I worked during nights, and I only got about 6 hours sleep, but those were the best 6 hours I ever got of sleep in my life,
Right.
because
They were restful.
restful, tired, I've eaten dinner, I'm ready to go to bed, I get some sleep, boom, I'm ready to go back work my day job, and then I'm ready to go work my 4 hour, 5 hour, night job, you know. And it was I did that for 2 years, but it was one of those things. But I learned, you know, my sleep patterns, and as a pen tester and as someone that does this, you have the most jacked up hours ever, because you cannot do a lot of this heavy testing and load testing and whacking those firewalls and
Right. At
hitting
2 in the
stiffy stuff,
afternoon.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when everybody's logged, or at 9 in the morning, when everybody's logging on. You
Right.
can't do that kind of stuff. Now you can do password sprays and password hacking at 9 in the morning
Right.
all day long.
And they'll probably miss it because
Yeah, if that's
everybody's
within
doing
the
it.
scope of work,
Right.
they'll probably miss the phishing attacks, your voicemail phishing attacks. They'll probably miss your social engineering attacks first thing in the morning, right? Versus, towards midday or towards late afternoon, because everybody's kind of like, huh, kind of getting that.
Right.
Like me, you got to get that first cup of coffee, and you got to keep, start getting your facilities together. Got to get the hamsters, got to hit the wheel and start running. So,
So,
there's
what do you think about that? The scope of work, because I think that's the most absurd thing. I mean, I understand you don't want denial of service, you don't want to take down your system, but do you think the criminal cares that you don't think we should be phishing their users?
no, because I look at it like this. Think like a bad guy. You criminals don't care. And I've run a red team. I've got red team people that
Because that's
work on
usually
my red
there's
team.
two things: DOS attacks, which okay, I understand you don't want to take down the
Yep.
system, and then phishing out of
Yep.
scope. Well, that's the number one vulnerability is your people.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the thing though too is one of the reason why I say I agree with that is that you have to think like the bad. What's a bad guy going to do, right? I mean, what are they going to do to break into your system? What are they going to do to steal your credentials? And that has to be in the scope of work. You got to
I'm
tell
going to
and
email
convince the
Susan
client,
and send her a fake Facebook login and get in.
right? Or look what happened to the Justice Department 5 years ago. Was there was a Russian hacking group that we now know as Fancy Bear that said, hey, your Gmail has been, government account, email account has been changed. Please reset your password. When they clicked on it, reset their password, and all this information, that was coming from the Justice Department was now going into, a NAS server somewhere in Siberia,
Right.
Because this person changed their password and now opened up a port, to where they're, as soon as they got the VPN started, it was over with. I mean,
And
so
like
tell people.
just recently with the exchange hack,
Very true. And if you
DoD
saw,
emails.
yeah, and if you saw what the government's doing now, the government is really being proactive about some of these things. Is that now the vendor has 100 days to fix the issue? They have 100 days. So that means that my company has to fix their, Office 365 issues. That means that Microsoft has 100 days to fix their, issues. And now there's accountability for it,
Right.
because we've
And
seen what happened, with and this year has been some really bad. I mean, in 2021, we've seen some really bad things happen, like cloud strike, sunburst, which, of
solar
course,
winds,
so the
down the
solar winds
chain,
attack, and I mean, these are things to where they're harvesting hundreds of
everybody
thousands of credentials, and information.
everybody uses solar winds and exchange.
Yeah. And Orion, whatnot. So it has been rough. This year's been rough. And the government uses it, and they had to turn that off. So it has been a very interesting year, at least in my perspective of, what the vendor's responsible for, what the government's responsible, and for what the user's responsible for.
Right.
So it's been kind of interesting to see how they've, chopped those things up, and they're now dictating those terms like, okay, you, the user, you're responsible to this line in the sand, right? And then my company, that I work for, they've got to make sure they're secure. So they're up to a certain, line in the sand, and the government
Right.
kicks in, the government and the vendor, and the line keeps going down, so it's like there's
You
a beginning and an end stopping point that actually is being shown now to, like, okay, I have to show you that I'm now secured, because I've done these XYZ things.
do you follow Gabrielle Hempel on LinkedIn? She's a
No.
cloud researcher.
Mm-mm.
So she's a pretty prominent cloud researcher, works in the pharmaceutical industry and all kinds of stuff. But
Don't use blockchain. That's all I got to say.
she posted something, I probably won't be able to find it, but a while ago there was a healthcare something that was breached, and they are now suing Amazon because the data was stored in an S3 bucket,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to, where's the shared responsibility? This was your platform that let us get breached. What Where is the shared responsibility? I can't find it right now. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, because I've always believed that there should be a cybersecurity blacklist, you know, of companies that, you know, uh, in advertising and marketing, they say we're a single pane, glass solution. You can, blah blah blah. I just tune out.
Right, well,
Um,
you were on the shit show yesterday, right?
yeah,
Thursday, I mean. You
yep,
were watching it yet Thursday? That's what he was talking about.
yeah. I mean, I'm of the same philosophy as what Chris Roberts and a lot of people that and Evan believe in, is that there should be a cybersecurity, is the proof in the pudding? Do they say they do what they're supposed to do? And it should go,
You
a
give them
little
a
bit.
credit score.
Yeah, you give them a credit, like a scoring system, you know, uh, does
Hey,
it get, and it
you've
should go
been
beyond the Better Business Bureau, as I
right.
say to people, is that you should go past a Better Business Bureau rating. It should be does this company that says these things, do they live up to those
Right. Your
promises?
organization has been hacked. People who use you have been hacked 10 times. They've
Right,
lost X number of dollars.
right,
You get you only score 3 out of 10 because you're one of the least secure.
right.
Like, this person has only been hacked once using you, and nobody's lost any money with this platform.
Right.
They've got a 9.
Right. So yeah, and it should be vendor agnostic. You know what I'm saying? You know, it should not be. It should be the users that are rating this. It should be the people that are using the software that are
Right.
rating this. There should be no undue
Amazon doesn't get to
influence.
rate Azure.
Yeah, I mean, oh God, no. Azure doesn't get to. They don't get to say anything about anybody. Let's just put it
Ever.
that way, ever. So so don't even get me started on that. That's an hour-long conversation
Let's
right
just
there.
all use
But
Alibaba Cloud.
yeah, I mean,
It's probably the safest bet at this point.
or Google, or start your own private cloud server at home. I mean, here's the thing though too is that I believe that you'll see more internal clouds over the next couple of years
Sure.
versus external clouds. And I hate the term clouds because I hate the term cloud, period,
There's
because
a
all it is a database service. It's a thin, like no different than a thin client to a server. You're doing the same thing. You are putting your stuff inside a database repository. So the term cloud that people say it's in the cloud, there is no cloud. There is just your computer somewhere else.
there's there's a group on LinkedIn. I'm trying to find it. It's a joke, really. Certified cloud, but it's spelled like clown. It's a joke being how they're leak
Oh, how
proof,
they're doing it, yeah.
proof.
Well, it's like I got my AWS cybersecurity certification, and I just needed to have it, and I took it for free, and I
Right.
took the security fundamentals, just so I would know how their security practices work. And because it's AWS. Now, does Google do something like that? Absolutely. Have I had time to do it? Nope. Because guess what? I don't deal with cloud every day.
Right. I was
Um,
looking at getting some cloud security search just to have them because we're gonna need them eventually.
yeah. I mean, you're going to need them eventually, but here's the deal. I mean, there's no big difference between what Azure does versus Google
Right.
versus
They just use different
Amazon.
names.
They just use different names. And it's
And their
depending on the
dashboard's
service.
different.
Yeah, and it's depending on what service you buy. Do you have a paid for service? Do you have a free service? Do you have an enterprise government service? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So there's different ways, as I tell people, when you look at cloud, you get what you pay for. First off,
Sure.
my cloud service is not in the United States. Mine is in Norway and Sweden, and I pay for a private server, with a company that gives me a secured 512, RSA bit encryption for me to push my stuff across the wire. And it's a backup of everything I have in this room. It's a backup of everything I've had since 1996, of all my data. Because first off, I don't want, Microsoft to sell it to advertisers.
Sure.
First off, I don't want Google to look at it, and I don't want AWS to try to resell it, so forth. And I don't want it under the prying eyes of the federal government, because I believe that it's my data, my data. And if you look at anything in the Constitution, you talk to any lawyer, there's nothing about privacy in the Constitution.
No.
There's nothing about privacy in the Bill of Rights. There's nothing about your privacy, period, in law, period. That's the reason why we got paparazzi. I
What
mean,
was
that's why.
the privacy, the enumeration of penumbra that
Yeah. I mean,
was
there's no real privacy in the United States. I mean, we got laws to protect you against gun violence, beating your wife, your kid getting molested. All these kind of laws are on the books. But when it really comes down to privacy issues, it's not existent in
I could
law.
sell your phone number right now and there's not
Right.
much. I mean, there's anti-doxing that people are, certain states
Yeah.
are working on doxing, but
But
how
that
deep does
varies
that
from
really
state to
go?
state,
If I just hide your name and address, is it still doxing if I tell them everything else about you?
right. In this state, if you're recording my conversation, you're supposed to tell me that you're recording the conversation.
Right. But see,
You
in my
know,
state, it's one party consent.
right?
So how does that work in a conversation between the two of us?
Correct.
I don't have to tell you, but I have to tell you.
But I have to tell you, yeah.
Right.
So, and that's the thing is that in open source countries that believe that the person that you're talking about, their data is their data and it should belong to them. That 2 to 12 terabytes, that should belong to moi here. That
Right.
because that's my data.
And I think the
Um,
GDPR is on the right. It's based on the right intentions.
yep.
Implementation, maybe not so much.
The implementation is a little bit different, because in the United States we don't have a lot of those things that are in play.
Right.
But high trust is getting there,
Also
at least in
dealing
the
with a fraction of the land and the population as
right,
well.
right. I'm a firm believer that you should be able to. I want to own my own data. I do. I don't want Google to own it. I don't want Amazon to own it. Sure as hell don't want Microsoft to own it.
Right.
So that's the reason why I have it in Switzerland, which is an open source based country, and Sweden because they're an open source based country, and I pay like I think it's 40 euros, which is roughly like $67, for 20 terabytes,
Right.
and I and just push it there all day long, and the United States and any court cannot subpoena that
Right.
information.
What do you think
Because
about Mega? Are you familiar with Mega?
yeah, Mega Upload,
Yeah.
that's Kim.com, so you got to know a little bit about him, and his weird world. But Mega Upload's fine. That's fine. That's
It's
perfectly fine.
that's what I actually
Perfectly
just
fine.
searched where it was
Yeah.
hosted. It's in New Zealand.
It's in New Zealand. Yeah. Same thing as, for the longest time. Oh man, I'm glad they're back online. I had a LavaBit account, which was secured email because I just got sick in 1998 of just getting pounded by just spam bots and email. And I mean, like, I had to search through the crap to find the real email that I wanted, right? And there was no way that you could whitelist and blacklist
Right.
email addresses back in 1998. You just couldn't
10,
do it.
10-minute mail and Gorilla Mail have been my best friend signing up for some services.
Right.
Because
So
I
I went
don't
to
put my email.
LavaBit, which was an encrypted email service, and I could whitelist and blacklist whoever I wanted to with a click, like I could add them, delete them. And then, this is where LavaBit also stored a lot of information on a lot of the emails and stuff that actually happened between Edward Snowden, and Julian Assange. They had to take the entire company had to tear itself down within 24 hours. And I lost my LavaBit account, and that pissed me off because I mean I paid those folks handsomely for years to make
Right.
sure that I had an encrypted email account. Well, they're back. About 4 years ago, they built the company back up somewhere else in another data center that is undisclosed, that nobody knows about. Nobody knows where the servers are at except for the admins and the people that own the company. They're not going to tell anybody. But you can buy a LavaBit account again to have encrypted email services, which is, and it's exactly the same for what I had for years. They just doctored it up. It's got some new windows, got some cool new features and everything. But guess what? I've got my Gmail, which is my normal, friend, and then I've got my LavaBit account.
Right.
And if I tell you to go to my LavaBit account and start sending me, the information that I need there, it's because I really want to have your emails. I want to make sure they're secured, stuff like that. If it's generalized emails, whatever reason, it may be, like today I sent you my Gmail account,
Right.
for this interview.
For
It's just
this.
it's just for generalized based use, stuff like that. I could care less if Google looks at it, or whatnot, because
Because there's
oh well,
nothing
he got a
important.
meeting request. Woohoo! I mean, no big deal. It's not like it's a state secret or something, that I'm doing,
Right.
the show with you today. So and that's where we have to and we've been debating this issue for ever since computers have been around. We've debated this before computers came around, as our privacy laws and some of the privacy issues that we have to deal with. I mean, the ACLU is around for a reason, is because we want to make sure that the privacy, and some of the laws for the person are not infringed.
Right.
And that is a very, very thin line and a
Yeah.
very gray line sometimes, depending on how you look at it, because it's perception and perception
It's
versus reality.
it's
You
not
perceive something versus how I perceive it are completely different.
it's not necessarily gray. It's just it's black and white depending on which side of the line you're on.
Right.
Because it's illegal for me to break into your house.
Right.
It's not if I have a warrant from some court that says I can go and put wiretaps on your phone.
Yep. Search and seizure. Completely different. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Same thing is that, and I consider, privacy to be a very big issue for people that are, especially in the public eye, and I feel sorry for a lot of these people, because they've become very introverted, especially if they're Hollywood stars or
Have to be.
they're in the music industry or they're in the movie industry, and they just get hounded by these guys with cameras. Especially, and I'm a
Sitting
huge
in
fan of
trees
Alec
watching you.
Baldwin. Yeah, I'm a
Right.
huge fan of Alec Baldwin punching photographers to get too close to him and his kid.
Yeah.
It's like, stay away from me and my children, stay away from me and my wife. That's your privacy. You should be able, I mean, just because you're walking down the street and you're buying groceries doesn't mean that someone has the right to break out a camera and start taking photos of
Right.
everything that you're doing,
And
and what you're
I think
buying.
it's gross that people even accept that.
Yeah,
Like
it is,
we
but
do.
like
Not
I
necessarily
mean,
the reporters, because there's always going to be scumbags everywhere you
oh yeah, yeah. It's like the
but
National Require was an Enquirer and all those things you
Inquirer
see.
and
Those things you see at the grocery stores. I mean, I just feel
TMZ.
I could care less what Brad Pitt's doing with the rest of his life. I could care less what George Clooney's doing.
Right.
I mean, there are people that follow their stars and actors and actresses and stuff like that. But I mean, it
But it
does
becomes
not.
an obsession.
Yeah, I mean,
Why do you need 700 people taking a picture of somebody getting out of a car to go eat?
I agree. I mean, who could care? I could care less what restaurant you're going to because I probably could never afford it. But
Yeah.
it's,
That
with that
steak
big,
costs more than I'm making this week.
yeah, steak probably costs more than I'm making on, 2 paychecks.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is, it to me it is a gross thing, and I mean it was especially my generation because I'm a Gen Xer. When we saw how it affected people like Kurt Cobain,
Yeah.
you know, how it's affected, the lead singer of Linkin Park, Soundgarden, all these people that are in that public eye, they get very depressed,
The
and
whole thing with Britney Spears, even she didn't shave her
oh
head
yeah,
because she was crazy. She shaved her head because people wouldn't stop touching her.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody thought she was turning into a Nazi or something like
Yeah.
that, or she'd gone schizophrenic or whatnot, and there were helicopters following her and everything, and it's kind of OJ-esque in a way, and it just to me, it's just kind of like, wow, I mean, I don't, you're popular and you're great and you're making money and you're having fun and you're doing what you want to do, right? There are people that are bred to, that are literally from the very young age that are Hollywood stars or they're are grown up in Hollywood, through legacy that become actors or actresses, their parents were actors and actresses. They're going to
Right.
be actors and actresses, right? And they grow up in the public eye. We've seen that happen a lot, with a lot of people. And I look at it like this, like Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman was a really cool kid, that was on a TV show, and then he turned out to be, had a really rough life after that show ended, and
Macaulay
because
Culkin.
yeah, Macaulay Culkin, same thing. I'm so glad he's finally cleaning up his act. He's getting off the drugs, he's getting off the alcohol, hopefully start making some movies again. He's getting his life straight, considering that he's, he ruined himself, and then there's just some stars, like rock stars. It's cocaine and whores,
But
24/7, 365, and they end up dead.
but
So
when you've been famous since you were 8, what else is there to do with life except cocaine and hookers?
yeah, cocaine and blow. And it's a sad thing, but I believe that those people should have privacy. I believe that they should be able to go into their home. They should be able to live their daily lives. They shouldn't have to wear costumes or anything like that and have to have, drivers go one way while they go another, so they can get their
Right.
shopping done,
What was
at
it?
Walgreens.
What's the guy who played Harry Potter? Daniel Radcliffe, I think.
Yeah, Daniel Radcliffe.
He
Yeah.
wore the same outfit for months just so they couldn't get a good picture of him.
Yeah, I mean,
It
that's
would look
just
like old pictures. You have to do that kind of stuff. Is outrageous.
yeah, I mean, it's like let him go shopping at Walgreens and go buy his deodorant. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Let him go to Kroger, buy his
Let him
groceries, you
walk a
know.
dog.
Let him walk his dog. Can he go to the beach at least? I mean, that without having, 8 million photos taken of him. And, I really consider that to be, and I like you. I think that's gross. I think it's, very much against their privacy rights that they should have. Uh, and on the flip side of that though too is that just because they're in the public eye doesn't mean they need to be in the public eye 24/7 365 constantly,
Right.
constantly. Same thing is in our industry, there should be constant monitoring done on high availability systems and stuff like that, but you really don't need to be watching the computer that works in garbage collection
Right.
sometimes,
Why are
depending on
you
what it's
logging
doing.
everything?
Right, and that's where I see, the abuse of a lot of vendors, in our industry, especially when it comes down to like Splunk or Logarithm and all this kind of stuff.
Multi-terabytes per day. What are you
What are
collecting?
you looking at? I mean, what kind of information are you gathering? Um,
You're
if you're
literally
you're
logging every single log on, every email.
right,
The only
and
way you could get that kind of data flow.
yeah, I mean, and what are you doing with all that data? I mean,
You're not looking at it.
what's the purpose? Why? My five whys. Why? Why are you doing this? Why is this being done? Why is this available? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And then, and first off, the cost of that, it's just got to be astronomical,
Right. I mean,
because,
maybe you have like an on-site instance where you're just paying for the license, but if you're running a cloud instance, the amount of data you're going
ooh,
through for that.
yeah, that's kind of ridiculous, as I tell people. That's just that doesn't make any sense. Same thing as, log files are good, for a reason, on computers and so forth. But you don't need to, you need to purge them every now and then. you
Right.
know, you need to, sometimes you got to clean house. This past month, I told myself, I said, all right, this is the year I go through all the files and say, okay, do I not need, and go through stuff. I've done pretty good. I'm halfway through, but it's just like, when you're looking at, what I think it was, I have 125 gigs of pictures, and I
Right.
was paying like, family photos here, and making files and then and dragging and dropping. So like wallpapers here, travel photos from vacation 10
Separating
years
what
ago.
you I mean, those kind of things are sentimental, so I
Yeah,
understand. But a PDF for, a tool that bought a year ago, and I
right.
downloaded the instructions and that tool broke 6 months ago.
Yeah, and that's the thing I'm doing. I'm purging out a lot of those PDFs, a lot of those files, a lot of stuff that I don't need. But one thing I do hoard is applications, and I'm the worst about that. I mean, I've hoarded like Chaos. Like, people haven't used Chaos in Linux in probably 10 years. I don't even think it would run, on Parrot OS or maybe Kali, or I don't even know if I could even put it in a VM to get it to run, but I still have a copy of it. I don't know why, but I'm going to delete it this year. I mean, it's like, I say it every year. It's like, I'm going to delete this application. I don't know why I have it, but it's the same thing. Like, I don't need Photoshop, 4.0. I mean, like, there's
No.
no reason to use it. So it's been one of those things where it's like, I want to clean through some of these drives. I'm going to organize all of them, whatnot. And the other thing though too, I decided this year is like, I'm going to buy 4 terabyte drives. I'm going to limit myself, except on my main solid state drive that actually runs my OS. That needs to be big, for my programs and stuff like that. But like my other tertiary, drives and everything else, I'm going to put in 4 terabyte drives and be done with it, because I've got like a 4 gig one here and a 500 gig one here and a 1 terabyte here. And then I got another, 6 terabyte
Right.
or 8 terabyte drive.
I
So
have a multi hub in the back of my PC here, and
yeah,
it's gross. It's got like a 256 flash, of 128. It's got another extension that's going to a card reader with a 128 gig card.
yeah. I mean, like I have an 8 terabyte drive over here on this shelf that it basically is one my local backup. I get my backups in the cloud, but then I've got my local backup.
Right.
And I plugged it up, and I was like, oh man, what I'm going to do? I'm just going to blow the backup out completely, just erase it because it's 8 terabyte drive. Just format it, be done with it. And I'm just going to copy everything here locally, on there,
Copy the
and
C
just
drive over.
yep, copy the C, copy D, copy everything over, put all the drives onto this 8 terabyte drive, and then I'm just going to unplug it. Right, that was everything at that state. Yeehaw! We'll move it back over here onto the shelf, and now I'm going to clean this thing out. Because if I need to go back locally, I can go back
Got
to
it.
that drive and bring it back from the dead because it's just a USB drive. All I got to do is plug it back in, boom, we're ready to
Right.
go.
But keep it
Find the file.
unplugged just in case.
Yeah, I mean nothing big there, but yeah, it's just one of those things. We're kind of like, oh man, this is the year I'm going to do it, man. I'm going to clean up the drives, and I'm going to take a little bit of my tax return. I'm going to put some more memory in, my box. I have given up on the look for a video card. I've just given
Yeah.
up, done. I can't find a 30, because I'm an NVIDIA person. I'm not a Radeon person because I use NVIDIA CUDA core processing here on my local box, and I use it for some mathematical stuff. I also use it for protein folding, stuff that I work with the folding at home project, which is a great project, and I use my GPUs and my CPUs to help fold, and the problem has been is trying to find new GPU. It's like I cannot.
Right.
It's like, dude, I got $1,500 right now. I'll give you, or $1,700. I'll be glad to give you for, a 3090, but I'm not paying $5,000 for a video card.
Right. I was looking at getting a whole bunch of, maybe 5 or 6 580s, 590s. I prefer AMD to build out a hash cap machine, a password cracking machine.
Good luck.
But I'm not paying $10,000 for, 5 cards.
Yeah, it's just absolutely the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, and I'm totally blame the Bitcoin miners for all this, and it's like
Have
I'm
you ever
looking
seen
for.
the pictures of the mining operations?
Oh yeah, I've seen. I mean, I've actually helped set them up before.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
I have a buddy with like 10 ASIC miners,
that's
and
crazy.
his electric bill is, I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't been rated.
Yeah, I mean, and if I actually have a picture, right? I mean, if you let me share my screen, I can show you.
Yeah.
Uh, this is a friend of mine. Let me move you over there, that screen. Let me open this up. All right. Let's see. Share. Yeah. Post is disabled. Okay, you gotta enable me. Screen share. Uh,
Go ahead and try.
all right. All right. Screen share. There we go. So there we go. That's the normal rig that you normally see for people that are doing, at home
Right.
Bitcoin mining. I mean, this is your normal, rig that you can buy at any of your, computer resellers, whatnot. And there's 10, EVGA, 3060s right there. 10 of them,
Right.
ready to go. I mean, this is one that you can buy right off the shelf,
Right. Ready to go. Just plug it
ready
in.
to go. That people are selling these, online. You can buy them from some mom and pop shops, sell them, but they're all you got to do is drop in your fans. There's your power supply, and there's your card with your, fans that are blowing your heat passively throughout. So it's all air cooled, ready to go right there. And there's 10 cards. And I mean, that's your normal Bitcoin mining rig. So
Right now, that thing's worth $30,000.
Probably so, but they probably bought these when they're $1,000 a pop. So there's 10 grand probably wrapped up in this.
Right.
The
But the question
average.
is, how much are they making it? If that gets them one Bitcoin, they've tripled their money.
Yep.
Or is it quintupled now? It's what, 50,000?
Yeah. So I mean, there you go. I mean, if you get 2 Bitcoins out of this, rig probably within, let's say, 2 weeks, and then sell them, you're done. You're ready to go. So, but I mean, this is just this is what you see right now. This is most what people have at home, and
Right.
how their home rig is actually set up. So, this is the reason why I have pretty much given up on trying to find a video card, is because of that kind of demand, from the Bitcoin industry, and they have just the prices. We're back at 2017. Prices. And the other thing though too is we're having a shortage of silicone right now, so chip prices are going up, memory prices are going up, all these prices are going up. We have a trade embargo still with China, which is not making things any better. We also have, a lot of the countries that were making chipsets and whatnot, not doing it anymore. They're just not doing it. So there's
Right.
been a
How do you
greater demand.
compete with China?
Yeah. And if you've ever seen, the logistics problem we have at the port of LA, where, a third of the country's, computer components come in through, they're still sitting out at sea,
Right.
because they're trying to get them to come in and undock, and then we got to get them on trains and go through the distribution, which is one of our biggest problems that we have right now in the continental United States, is we have a very, very broken, and I mean broken, supply chain
Right.
problem. We
Even
have a
here, like the Port of Palm
huge.
Beach, not
Yeah.
it's not a big port or anything, but Port of Palm Beach, the gap between there's Singer Island and Palm Beach Island, and then you come into the port that way, it's 150 yards wide. You can fit one ship in, one ship out,
Yep.
maybe.
I think Port of New Orleans has gotten better. They've gotten better, for some of the stuff they have coming in, from other countries, stuff that's coming through the canal. But yet still, I mean, you're still talking, got to get it on trains, or you got to get it on trucks. You still got to get it, to a distribution site. Still got to be able to get the pallets broken down, or get the pallets delivered to wherever it's supposed to go. So there's a lot of, things that we've got to really start taking a look at, especially from road and rail,
Right.
in the logistics market, and then how we can better do our supply chain, and better make
That's
our
something
supply chain.
that's been skipped a lot in all risk management is supply chain.
Right.
Oh yeah, video cards will always be available. We don't have to really worry about it.
Oh, you do
Always
now.
going into GPUs.
Memory will always be around. No, not really. I
A
mean,
ship's not going to get turned sideways in a canal. We're not going to
yeah,
lose $5 billion.
a day ish.
Yeah, it was like $100,000 a second. That's
Yeah,
not
it
going to
was.
happen.
That was the most. That right there. I think is the straw that has broken the. Literally, I hate to say it that way, the straw that's broken the camel's back. Or basically that's been that.
That's the
That basically has
catalyst to
been
change
the.
everything.
I think that's been the breaking point to where they're going to really start dredging the Suez Canal. Because I mean, at New Orleans, when I was living down there, I mean, they dredged all the time to get silt and stuff that came down from the top part of the Mississippi River, and the St. Louis area, and everything
Right.
that comes into the Mississippi River comes down and gets to Memphis, and then and the thing though too is that tide starts rolling down, and then that's where all that silt and stuff does. So they start grabbing all that out of there, and dredging it so the boats don't get basically run on a sand barge or something like that, or and hurt the ship. So to make a long story short, they're going to start probably hopefully doing that in the Suez Canal, because I mean it's
Making it
very
wider and
narrow.
deeper.
It's very narrow and it's very shallow, So hopefully they get a little bit deeper.
I watched an explanation of one thought of why it turned the way it did, and just the fluid dynamics of a ship that size in such a little space.
I mean, you got that little space, and you're literally taking the Empire State Building and running it through it. No, you're
Yeah,
taking 3 football fields and running it through it.
at 15, 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. So, it is what it is, but, hopefully we will see a better, thing looking at risk management and supply chain. That's going to start becoming more of a talking point. It's like, can we get the stuff that we need in the amount of time to be able to do a project, or to do, our
Right.
emphasis. So,
And will it be safe to get
right.
it?
Absolutely. And
Because
if it breaks, what's the next
right,
step? I mean, so
we
it
can
is
always
one of
get
those
a
things.
software, our Photoshop doesn't work. We can always download GIMP. But what's the maintenance hook?
Yeah.
What's that back door? We have licenses with Adobe.
If
What's
Adobe
wrong with
Cloud goes
you?
down, there's a lot of people that are going to be very angry, especially in the graphics world,
Right.
in the entertainment industry and in the advertising world. So, as I tell people, we shall see. It's one of those things we don't know until something bad happens.
Right.
But hopefully this, if it goes back to what I've always said, if you see something, say something. Hopefully your viewers and the people that are listening to this and watching this see that. If you are, seeing something that's going wrong and bad, please alert your managers and your management, and your cybersecurity team, to be aware and have, something that, because there are persistent actors that are after your intellectual property and your data, because that is a commodity, and normally that starts at about $2,000 a record, depending on what it is. So as I tell people, you want to make sure that that stuff is protected, because that's the asset in play. That's the commodity that they actually want. So like with my red teams, that I work with, and the red teams that I'm on and everything, it's like, okay, we spend a lot of time whiteboarding this stuff out, and talking about our vectors of attack, how to silently do some of these things, how to be able to manipulate and control the narrative. Okay, because that's what you're trying to do. And and then you got to know the skill set for everyone, what they can and can't do, what their strong points are, what their weak points are. Like for me, I'm not good at password sprays, not good at password hacking. Really want to get better at it, but I normally use Jack, Jack the Ripper, or Jack the that's built into Kali Linux, or I use a bunch of different packet applications. But same thing. The best place to start harvesting credentials at LinkedIn. Start with the CEO and go all the way down to the secretary.
Right.
You know, that's the best way to start.
Hunter.io. Just put in a company and
Pull up the
you'll
info.
find you'll find a valid credential somewhere.
Sniper is a great program for reconnaissance. And I'm really good at that. Same thing is, I want to get better at password hacking. There's some things I want to be able to learn to be able to do that. But the same thing, like I don't do a lot of testing on mobile devices. I'm not a phone freaker.
Right.
I use a phone as a phone. I don't use it as a lifestyle device. I use this thing to make phone calls and, Teams and, a couple of different things for email.
But
And that's
how easy
basically about
is
it.
it to get an email and get compromised?
Right. So I don't really use I use a phone more as a phone, than a digital lifestyle device, as I tell people. Same thing, I have a landline here. Most people don't even know who that even is nowadays. I mean,
Right.
like most people have never seen one of these or ever used one of these. I mean, it tickles me to death.
Is it VoIP or is it actually
No, it's VoIP. It's actually, voice over IP, but I mean, most people don't have a landline phone. I have a landline phone for
right?
meetings just in case I can't get, onto the internet. I can still get onto the call. If I can't get through it onto my phone, as long as I have the information, that never goes down, so,
Right.
that's one of those
I
things.
pay for it with my internet service. I just don't have it plugged in
Yeah. Some
because I
people
just
don't
get
know.
spam calls.
Yep. I mean, no,
I
I
don't
don't
want
even
to
get
renew
that.
my auto insurance.
Uh, I asked the ISP that I use to make my number unlisted. So like nobody has it. So normally when I use it, it's like for vendor calls, when I'm calling or talking to a vendor, because I don't want them to have my cell phone number ever,
Right.
like ever. And if a vendor calls me, I charge them $25 a minute. I actually bill them. So I tell the vendor when they're calling me, he's like, this phone, is recording this conversation. I know who you are. I know where you work, you know, I'm billing you $25 a minute for my time. Do you want to continue this conversation? Yes or no? Normally they say no, because they're trying to sell something. They don't want to
Not
be
pay
billed
for
for
it.
that. They don't want to pay to talk to me. And I have sent off, purchase orders and POs to companies, that have still taken up my time, still called me and everything, and I've billed them for it. And it went to collections, and then finally they did pay, because it's just cheaper to pay me off than me just keep, racking up collections calls, and you getting
Right.
collections calls. Um, because you called me, that was the law. I told you, you were informed. I gave you the right to consent, yes or no. You denied, and you still went forward. So guess what? I'm billing you, bro. I mean, that's just
Right.
how it is. My time belongs to my company. My time belongs to my family. My time belongs to my projects, the work that I'm doing. My time also belongs to my students that I teach, at University of Arizona, my grad students I work with. My time belongs to my research projects, that I work on, so, and some of that is, you always have to have time for yourself, read your books,
Right. Do what you
keep
want
up
to do.
what's, yeah, keep up what's current, and, if you call me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon trying to sell me something when, I'm doing my work, I'm going to charge you for that.
Right.
And
Because you're taking away from my job that's paying me. So you got to pay me.
that's right. And people are like, wow, that's really kind of excessive. I said, well, hell, lawyers do it every damn day.
Right.
You call an
If your
accountant, you
lawyer
call a
gives you a
lawyer.
free consultation, they're not good lawyers.
There's no such thing as a free consultation with a lawyer. As simple as that. You are billing for the same thing. You call a company that's doing a development or DevOps company, that's doing a design work or work for you. They're billing you. I mean, they're just like lawyers too. I mean, they will send you a bill. Hey, I'm checking up on my project. Can I talk to Gina over there in development? Okay, sure, no problem. Click, hit the meter. I mean,
Consultation
simple.
fee.
Yep. You are asking about your project, and you're asking for a consultation on exactly how, everything's how it's going, how the status update's doing, blah, 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 blah. Normally they send that to you at the end of the month, right? But if you just willy-nilly call them out of the blue, they're billing you for it.
Right.
You are eating up someone's time. Therefore, you in asking all these kind of questions, or stupid questions, or imperative questions, or critical questions, but still, their time is money, just like mine. So, my boss is kind of hesitant on that, but he agrees with it. you know, he's like, he likes engaging vendors. He doesn't like vendors engaging him, for no reason whatsoever.
Right.
So it's a very big deal. And it's a very touchy subject for some people. So some people are like, yeah, I don't mind. I don't want to make my vendor mad. I don't want to piss them off or anything like that. But it's like, no, I have what I call follow-up Fridays. I set up all my vendor meetings on one day, on Fridays, and Fridays only. You don't talk to me during the week. I tell them that when I first start working with a vendor. If you're going to be my vendor rep and I'm going to be talking to you, right? Do not call me during the week. I'll charge you. Okay. On Fridays, we have a normal meeting time, and it's my time to engage you. I've taken time out of my schedule to engage you, right? No charge whatsoever, right? You're trying to sell me something and I want to buy it, right? Or you're trying to sell me something and I want to look at it and get information about it, or
Right.
whatnot.
It's
I
mutual.
That's mutual. I gave you that time and that time only. And normally I have a hard stop, right? If you can't tell me everything about your product in about an hour, I'm probably going to lose interest real quick.
Right.
And I love picking apart what vendors say, because it's all this kind of kung fu word ninja kind of things that exactly mean the same thing,
Right.
man.
I'm not a C-level. Don't don't
Right.
don't
Yeah.
sell me magic. Sell me the technology.
Yeah. There's
Don't
no
be a
such
marketing
thing.
person to me.
The best one I heard was invisible processes. And he said there was science behind it. And I'm like, what? There's science behind. I love science. Let's talk about it. And they didn't really go into the explanation of hidden processes, or transparent processes, or
If I see
uh,
hidden processes on my computer, I'm worried.
right. So what are they doing? I mean, that's that. Yeah, I threw that out there. Me just being first off being curious, and then second off being a security guy, not being an ass, but just trying not to be an ass. But it's like, I've never heard of invisible processes. You need to tell me what an invisible process is, because if it breaks, how the hell am I going to fix it? That
Right.
that kind of deal. So
If I see
there's
this on my
Matt.
network and I block it, is your product
Right,
going to stop working?
right. I mean, the very simple questions like ask like that. That it's not magic. I mean, I know that. And you're telling me use Java, so I really know it's got bugs in it, or it's got holes in it. And I know it's web enabled, so I know that I can touch it from the internet. So I mean, there's nothing invisible about those processes. Port translation still port translation. Whatever you're using for TCP is
Just
still
be honest.
TCP.
If you don't understand the deep technical aspect of it, just say that.
Just say that. Yeah, if you don't know, say you don't know. I will not down you. I will not anything for that, because if you don't know, I would much rather you tell me you don't know than lie to me. you
It's
know
it's pixie dust.
yeah, it's magic. I'm like, who's running your fucking network, Gandalf? I mean, like, what the hell? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
what's
magic
in your
behind
pipe?
this. Yeah,
I know what was in his pipe. What's in yours?
yeah, I mean, that's the pain part of my our industry, and especially in my world, is when you're working with people and you're managing teams and you have big projects and you have hard deadlines that don't move. There's no negotiation. It will be done on this day.
Right.
you know
Everything is done or else.
Right. And there's no such thing as overtime in my world. We don't get paid for overtime. I'm a salaried employee,
Right.
and I am told to work from this time to this time, and then everything else is off the table. But between this time and this time, you better have some work to show for me, right?
Right.
So, they don't care
You
how you
better
get
be
it done.
producing that whole time.
That's right. I don't care how you get it done, just get it done. I mean, I just finished doing a database, working on some database information almost 7 days ahead of time. And the lady was blown away. I said, look, you gave me a deadline by this date. I got other stuff to do too as well. I wanted to go ahead and get this done, which was not that hard to do, so I can work on my harder stuff now. And she's like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Thank you so very much. We're going to give it to the DBAs. They're going to love it, yada, yada, yada. Thank you so very much for, doing the work and everything. Very nice woman, and thing though too is my boss told me to go work with her, right? And I got it done early. Now I can really focus on the hard projects that have to be able to do that. So it is prioritization, in a way.
Right.
What can I get done first and get out of the way and whatnot. And they don't teach that in college. They don't teach that in school. It's a life skill. Most of these life skills that I know inherently, most people do. Some people just don't. And since I really don't have a filter and I'm kind of untethered in a way, I yell, scream, cuss, hoot, holler, throw stuff. For a reason, is because if you do stupid stuff, I'm going to call you out on it.
Right. I mean, how hard is it
And
to understand? You don't tackle the hardest thing first if you don't know where
right.
you are to begin with.
It's like hackers. Hackers go for the lowest, hanging fruit, that's there, because guess what?
I'm getting the thing you don't
Eventually
have a
you're going to,
password on.
yep, eventually you're going to work your way up to the top of the tree. As I tell people, it just takes time, whatnot. But, same thing is, it blows me away when, it's like we have Grammarly for a reason. Words in our industry matter a lot, and they have a lot of weight that goes with them. And I'm not some drama queen English teacher, thespian, teacher that's teaching you this. I'm just telling you, if you say this in a report and they read it, they believe it's true, because they don't know any different, because you, ladies and
You're
gentlemen, are
the
the expert.
expert.
Yeah. So they're coming to you for the info. So if you give them something that is not true, or it's spelt wrong, or it means something different, or you can't,
Or you're
fully
too verbose
explain.
even. They're gonna tune out. I'm working on
Yeah.
something now. I was looking at a spreadsheet, couple dozen cells wide. And I'm looking at it, I was like, I can say the same thing in 5 cells. A, B, C, D, E, F, and it's done. And you've got
Yep.
15 cells wide, 15 columns. It's like, I'm not going to read that. If I'm the client, I'm not going to read that. I'm
No.
not going to understand it. Condense it, make it nice and simple, easy. These
Yep.
people aren't IT people. I can read it because I know what it's supposed to say.
Right.
These guys are going to get confused and lose interest in the first row.
See, I have a rule when I write. I'm actually going to be speaking in Nashville this year at the ICCA. That's working in conglomeration with Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So it'll be a virtual conference, just like they did Black Hat and a couple other conferences because of COVID. We all want to make sure everybody's safe, nobody gets sick. Distance is a good thing. I'm glad everybody's starting to get shot. So I've had my 2, so I've been inoculated, but still, precaution is everything. Make sure you wash your hands, wear a mask. So simple as that. So this year, I'm speaking on a topic that I submitted last year because they didn't have a conference last year because COVID hit. And,
Right.
when you're dealing with booking, a conference center and everything like that, it's really hard. So the actual talk I'm doing this year is what comic books have taught me about the IT industry. Because I'm a
Okay.
huge comic book fan, and there's heroes and villains on both sides. In this industry, it's so hard to make friends, people that you trust and people, that are good to work with because, there's a lot of money and a lot of scandal and people just backstab and corporate, so forth. But it's like same thing. My handwritten report that I'm turning into them, for my presentation is 9 pages. That's it.
Right.
I normally go 9 to 10 pages after that. People just don't pay attention,
Nice,
don't read,
sweet, to
don't
the
give,
point.
don't care. Same thing when I do a PowerPoint presentation, I do no more than 13 slides. That's my own rule. If I can't tell you within 13 slides in less than 30 minutes to an hour, with questions, because normally I give a 30-minute one and it's like with questions after that, which normally I take 30 minutes of questions if they want, or I can talk for an hour, with 15 minutes of questions after
Right.
that, from the audience. Um, that's normally my rule because normally people after 30 minutes they start checking their phone, they start what the time they got to pick up the kids, what's dinner, what are they gonna do for dinner tonight, they're trolling for whatever. I mean, they're trolling Facebook, yada yada yada, because they're not paying attention anymore. So I try to keep things very short, sweet, to the point, very brief, make sure that your words do count, so I make sure that what I'm saying comes out very, very crystal clear in the beginning, because I have had, many, many a time I've had IT directors sweating bullets when I come in there and I start telling them, because they want 10 minutes of bad and 30 minutes of good, or they want, 30 minutes of good and 5 minutes of bad.
Right.
And I come in there and I give them an hour long, tongue lashing, about this is what's about to happen. This is how bad things are. This is what to expect. This is the totality. Here's your response. Here's not your response. Here's your DR plan. Here's your cyber kill chain. These are the vulnerabilities that we found. These are your exploits. This is what you need to be able to do and improve, right? You can't sugarcoat that. You
No,
just can't.
because they're not going to hear it. They're only
You
going to hear
know,
that last little sentence, but other than that, everything's fine.
you can't rule. You cannot do these presentations by fear. You know, you cannot scare people into buying, unless there's some kind of critical event and it's a knee-jerk reaction, which sometimes happens. But I'm a firm believer that, I should be able to totally agnostically lay out the cards for you and let you decide.
Right.
That's me. It's just like a Vegas card dealer. It's like, I'm out. I'm going to lay everything out here. You need to make an informed decision for your company. But, before you do that, these are your checks and balances. This is the good, this is the bad, this is the indifferent. And most CISOs, and IC, and CEOs, and most of these people are and CTOs, they start thinking dollar signs immediately. But there's ways of doing it with the resources that you have in house and with the tools that you have in house. It's just restructuring and getting them, to be used and used right, and then you start that purchasing process within, now it's 100 days. It used to be, longer. You used to have, 4 to 6 months to make these decisions. Now you
Right.
effectively have 100 days, by federal law. Um, so it's a very big change in our industry. I think it's a good thing. I think that you should not just if you've got a project plan and and you're dealing with PCI, or you're dealing with client data, or you're dealing with whatever it may be, and it has to be digitally secured or have two-factor authentication or be encrypted or whatnot, and you don't have that, I believe that you should have only 100 days to kind of mull over what you're
Right.
going to do to fix all that.
You don't get
3 months, I say 3 months is pretty good if you ask me. That's a whole quarter to give
right.
you an idea. In the business world, gives you 90 days plus some, to institute a plan to start getting that fixed.
Right. Because if your consumers didn't comply with the contract for 6 months, would they still be your consumers? Or
Right.
would you terminate your contract? But
Absolutely.
you can, dilly dally, beat around the bush and not secure my data all you want.
Right. And I think that 100 days is a good timeline to secure funding. If it's a grant or if it's something you've got to do for monies, and that's an issue, there should be somewhat, that's roughly about the same time that you can get a grant proposal, started, on paper, for being able to start buying software, hardware, whatever
Right. Whatever
might
you
need
need.
for your stack. I don't know what everybody's ISO model is. Everybody's different. Every network's different. So it might be completely flat versus, something that's completely different, to where they've got IP segmentation and stuff set up with multiple VLANs and whatnot. Who knows? But it is what it is. So, as I tell people, I think that, we're to cover, and this is going to be my final saying before I have to go is, today we've talked about, regulation, which is a very good thing. Encryption, the laws that are old and barbaric need to be updated. Supply chain, as well as, what is happening in the IT security industry that needs to be improved, how we would be able to help these things, and then basic life skills and presentation stuff that you need to be able to do to present, your ideas to a whole nother level.
Definitely. Definitely need to. There's a point now that we all have to kind of do our own part. A lot of people have been kind of lax as far as security, even just a common person nowadays. You can't rely on the government. They're not going to keep you secure. They're not here to save you. We have to save ourselves.
Yep.
If they start making efforts towards a better world, that's great. But we're on the battlefield. We have to do it ourselves.
There is always a fear of big brother. Don't get me wrong. I've worked on both sides of the coin. I've worked on the good side and the bad side, of that coin, in the public and the private industry. And there's been lots of times, especially when I was working on operations overseas, for the military, where I go, shit, is this legal?
Yeah.
Is this can we or should we be doing this? But those are my orders.
Right.
I cannot question that, because as a, PMC, private military contractor, I'm there to provide a service and do a
Right,
job.
right. I don't I mean at the highest levels.
Oh yeah.
You
At the
know,
highest levels, they've gotten fat. They gotten really,
the guys
it
at the
used to
bottom
be
have to do what they're told.
10
It's the
years
ones
ago, everything,
doing the
yeah.
telling.
Oh yeah. 10 years ago, it used to be lean and mean. How lean can we run it and how mean can we make the system to where we don't have to upgrade and do all this stuff all the time? Now it's, what I call, it's a bloated system. We've,
Right.
integrated and done all this stuff, that we've added to networks and our systems and our security.
Just
Some of
buying
it
whatever
is
they want and throwing it on the network.
right. I mean, some of it is so repetitive, some of it's doing this, but if it was tooled right, and you could cut some of it out, it wouldn't break as much, less means more sometimes, and, running a thinner network that is basically, what I call the 7 layer system of the 7 layers of the ISO, the MISO model. If you're protecting those different things, within your layers, you're fine.
Right.
You don't need, 4 SIM products. You don't need 6 antivirus programs. You don't need, uh, let's say 8 firewall applications. I've seen that before, doing monitoring. Why? You pick one. Just pick one. Pick one. I mean, you know. Same thing, in the pen testing world, tools are a myriad. You're going to do something different than I'm going to do something different.
Right.
But
How many
if you get the
password
same,
cracking tools are there?
right, I mean, same thing. I mean, net stat. It's going to tell you the same thing whether you're doing it or I'm doing it. Still the same thing. The same thing I tell people about cron jobs. When you're writing a cron job, I mean, as long as it's doing what it's supposed to be doing in Linux, you're fine.
Right.
Windows, PowerShell's PowerShell. Not much has changed, in some of those things. Does it look a little tweaky and different? Yeah, it's fine. You can add stuff and do stuff differently than I did. But it's the same thing. Like I tell people, Python's where it's at. I
Right.
mean, you look at some of the other programming languages and how bloated they are versus something that's very thin. It's a lot easier to
Why do you
be
need a
able to.
thousand lines of code when three will do it?
Right. I mean, simple is good sometimes, and it's not nothing against me or my vendors. I don't mean to knock them or anything like that, but the point being is though is look at your system. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you got now? What can we improve on? What do you need, don't need? What's EOL, what's not EOL, and then start running your factors from that. And you can build a really decent system at a good price at to where you're not getting completely gouged, only unless you're building an enterprise-based system, which is completely different, because most small, mid-sized businesses, at least in the continental United States, need a certain level of cybersecurity. It's just given. If
Right.
you're at the enterprise or the government level, it's completely different. You need as much
Right.
as you possibly can, but you have to be able to build it within a system that is manageable,
Securing 10 computers is a lot easier than 10,000.
Oh hell yeah. Oh hell yeah. Or OT systems,
Yeah.
that I because I deal with IT and OT. So when you're looking at manufacturing systems, it's completely different. It's a
Right. When
whole
you
different
have
set
to
of
secure
rules.
every single board.
Yeah. It's a whole different world. When you look at 10,000 devices, it's a whole different reality
Right.
than dealing with, a computer lab of 20 computers or 100 computers.
When you scan a
You know,
network and see 10,000 items returned.
That's right. I've done it. And, especially, in a water treatment facility or a plant or SCADA-based systems that I deal with, it's a whole nother animal. So, well, sir, it's been a pleasure talking with you tonight. My time is up. I have a hard stop. Uh,
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure as always. Do you want to promote LinkedIn, Twitter?
you can see me on, if I get between 20 to 30 LinkedIn, requests a day. So it's kind of weird, so I approve everybody. I don't care. I mean, if you want to listen to me, that's fine. If you're not, you can say you hate my guts, but it's Luther Chip Harris, my full name, at LinkedIn. I do not have a website. I will not have a website. You cannot find me on Facebook. I am not on Facebook. To where it's publicly known. But there is a group that I do help and monitor, which is the Memphis 2600 hacker group, where we post everything from, troll stuff to memes to comic book stuff to really interesting articles to what's happening in the industry right now, pen testing programs, so forth. And that's about as close as I actually get, to dealing with Facebook. I have my own private Facebook account, but I don't give that out to everybody. So,
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure and I hope to talk soon.
you too, sir. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful night.
All right, you too.